adornments that echo anchors pulled from the seafloor. Water does not thrash against him, it parts. When he stands in waist-high surf, the waves bend around his frames. The tide slows in recognition. The current listens. His crown rises like coral and plume, red and gold, cutting against the ocean air. Not vanity, but rank. Not decoration, but office. He governs sea salt. He governs ships. He governs routes, and routes shape destiny. The sea has been commerce, invasion, escape, exile, return. It has carried explorers and conquerors, traders and captives, dreamers and displaced. Agwe presides over every crossing. He is the keeper of the passage, the witness of migration, the silent authority over the line between homeland and horizon. For the African diaspora, the Atlantic is not just geography, it is archive, it is grave, it is womb, it is rupture and survival intertwined. Millions crossed unwillingly, millions never saw land again, millions endured and carried memory forward. Within voodoo cosmology, the sea is threshold, a place where worlds meet and spirits travel. Offerings to Agwe are set afloat in small boats and released into the open water. They are not placed on altars inside walls. They are entrusted to distance. If the sea returns the offering, it was refused. If it carries it outward, it was accepted. Even in ritual, the message is clear. The ocean decides. Agwe becomes more than a maritime spirit. He becomes the guardian of the scattered, protector of those who crossed and survived, keeper of those who did not. The Atlantic is not silent under his command, it remembers. Storms rise, and some say it is random weather. Others whisper that the sea corrects itself, that it refutes certain weights, that it rejects certain chains. Agwe does not rage without purpose. He commands. In ceremony, when he mounts a devotee, the posture changes. The body straightens. Movements become precise, controlled, naval. This is dignity in the bearing, authority in the gesture. He may salute, he may demand water. He may move as though standing on the deck of a ship no one else can see. His authority is not theatrical, it is discipline. He is often paired with La Sarine, the mermaid of depth and longing. If she is the song that draws you to the sea, he is the structure that governs its currents. If she is seduction and emotion, he is sovereignty and protection. Together they embody the emotional and commanding halves of the sea, call and command, longing and law. Agwe's roots reach beyond the Caribbean. His essence echoes older West and Central African water traditions, river spirits, deep water guardians, forces of crossing and return. He carries ancestral continuity across oceans. Water was humanity's first mirror, its first road, its first boundary. Agwe stands within that paradox. He is not the wave that crashes for spectacle, he is the tide that endures. For a people dispersed by water, he represents strength without cruelty, authority without oppression, protection without noise. He does not shout across the sea. He stands within it, steady, unmovable, commanding routes no empire could fully control. The ocean still moves, ships still cross, and beneath every horizon line, the admiral watches. Agwe, Admiral of the Living Sea. Stand at the edge of the Atlantic long enough and you begin to understand something. The ocean is not empty. It moves with intention. It breathes with memory. It carries names that history tried to erase. Every tide pulls at something deeper than the shore. Within that vastness stands Agwe. He is not the chaos of crashing waves, nor the reckless fury of the storm. He is the discipline within the tide, the command inside emotion, the authority that charts the horizon. Agwe is admiral. His presence is not loud, but it is undeniable. His skin is imagined in deep maritime blue, not decorative sky blue, but the heavy blue found beneath the surface where the light begins to disappear. blue that borders on black, blue that holds secrets. Against the depth, gold rests easy, chains like navigational lines, medallions like compass centers, adornments that echo anchors pulled from the seafloor. Water does not thrash against him, it parts. When he stands in waist-high surf, the waves bend around his frames. The tide slows in recognition. The current listens. His crown rises like coral and plume, red and gold, cutting against the ocean air. Not vanity, but rank. Not decoration, but office. He governs sea salt. He governs ships. He governs routes, and routes shape destiny. The sea has been commerce, invasion, escape, exile, return. It has carried explorers and conquerors, traders and captives, dreamers and displaced. Agwe presides over every crossing. He is the keeper of the passage, the witness of migration, the silent authority over the line between homeland and horizon. For the African diaspora, the Atlantic is not just geography, it is archive, it is grave, it is womb, it is rupture and survival intertwined. Millions crossed unwillingly, millions never saw land again, millions endured and carried memory forward. Within voodoo cosmology, the sea is threshold, a place where worlds meet and spirits travel. Offerings to Agwe are set afloat in small boats and released into the open water. They are not placed on altars inside walls. They are entrusted to distance. If the sea returns the offering, it was refused. If it carries it outward, it was accepted. Even in ritual, the message is clear. The ocean decides. Agwe becomes more than a maritime spirit. He becomes the guardian of the scattered, protector of those who crossed and survived, keeper of those who did not. The Atlantic is not silent under his command, it remembers. Storms rise, and some say it is random weather. Others whisper that the sea corrects itself, that it refutes certain weights, that it rejects certain chains. Agwe does not rage without purpose. He commands. In ceremony, when he mounts a devotee, the posture changes. The body straightens. Movements become precise, controlled, naval. This is dignity in the bearing, authority in the gesture. He may salute, he may demand water. He may move as though standing on the deck of a ship no one else can see. His authority is not theatrical, it is discipline. He is often paired with La Sarine, the mermaid of depth and longing. If she is the song that draws you to the sea, he is the structure that governs its currents. If she is seduction and emotion, he is sovereignty and protection. Together they embody the emotional and commanding halves of the sea, call and command, longing and law. Agwe's roots reach beyond the Caribbean. His essence echoes older West and Central African water traditions, river spirits, deep water guardians, forces of crossing and return. He carries ancestral continuity across oceans. Water was humanity's first mirror, its first road, its first boundary. Agwe stands within that paradox. He is not the wave that crashes for spectacle, he is the tide that endures. For a people dispersed by water, he represents strength without cruelty, authority without oppression, protection without noise. He does not shout across the sea. He stands within it, steady, unmovable, commanding routes no empire could fully control. The ocean still moves, ships still cross, and beneath every horizon line, the admiral watches. Goddess who did not accept drought. In the late Bronze Age city of Ugarit, along the coast of what is now Syria, clay tablets are pressed with cuneiform signs that preserve one of the oldest storm myths in recorded history. Among those tablets was the story of Baal, the storm god. And within that story stands a figure who does not wait quietly for events to unfold. Her name is Anet. Now, Baal was not merely a god of thunder in this narrative. He represents rain, fertility, agricultural survival. In a region dependent on seasonal storms, Baal's vitality determines whether crops grow or fail. When Baal rises, the land flourishes. When Baal falls, droughts threaten everything. The Baal cycle describes a cosmic conflict. Baal clashes with Yam, the sea. Later, he confronts Mot, the god of death and sterility. These are not abstract enemies. Yam represents chaotic waters. Mot represents drought, dryness, the swallowing stiffness of death. And at one point in the narrative, Baal is defeated. Now, the text becomes fragmentary, but the message is clear. The storm god disappears. The rains cease. The agricultural cycle halts. And for a Bronze Age society, this is not symbolic drama. This is catastrophe. And this is where Anat enters with force. Anat is often described as Baal's sister. In some traditions, she is also his ally or consort. But the text makes one thing unmistakable. She is not subordinate. She is fierce, independent, emotionally intense. When Baal falls, Anat does not collapse into mourning. She reacts. The Ugaritic texts describe her rage in striking terms. She seeks out those who are responsible. She seizes enemies. She attacks without hesitation. The language is violent. She grabs warriors. She splits them. She scatters bodies. One passage describes her wading knee-deep in blood. Another describes her rejoicing in slaughter. This detail is uncomfortable for modern ears, but it tells us something important. In this world, violence carried out in defense of cosmic order is not shameful. It's necessary. Anat does not hesitate because hesitation would mean drought continues. She does not negotiate because negotiation does not bring rain. And myth does not portray her as irrational. It portrays her as decisive. The slaughter imagery is vivid, almost ritualistic. The battlefield becomes a space of sacred correction. Blood is not randomly cruel, it's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human entities, is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the text describes her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Anat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story. She is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall, warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not chaos. It's simply boundary enforcement. She defends Baal. She defends fertility. She defends continuity. And in that way, Anat represents a specific kind of sacred feminine power. Not romantic love, not cosmic abstraction, but embodied physical defense. Her myth forces uncomfortable questions. Can violence actually be sacred? Can destruction be restorative? Is loyalty more important than mercy in unstable societies? Now, from the authors of the Baal cycle, the answer appears to be yes. Anat's blood-soaked battlefield is not a moral failure. It is divine necessity. And that necessity restores the storm. When Baal rises again, the land breathes. Rain falls, crops grow, life resumes. The cycle continues. Anat does not claim the throne. She does not demand worship in the text climax. She recedes once balance is restored. The restraint is telling. She is not driven by conquest. She is driven by defense. Her violence has purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, she stands down. In comparative mythology, Anat stands apart because of the clarity of her ferocity. She is not softened. She is not reinterpreted as gentle. The tablets preserve her intense, unapologetic, and loyal. That preservation gives us a rare insight into the psychology of ancient culture. In a fragile world, survival is sacred. In a fragile world, protection may require force. Anat embodies the logic without hesitation. She is not storm, she is not fire. She is blade and blood in defense of continuity. In the Baal cycle, drought threatens civilization. Anat refuses to let drought win. And in that refusal, she becomes one of the most striking examples of the fierce, protective, feminine in ancient Near East. She is the goddess who did not accept death as final. She is the one who confronted drought with steel. She is Anat. Angrboda, the grief bringer. In Norse cosmology, the end of the gods has a mother, and her name is Angrboda. She does not rule a hall in Asgard. She does not sit among the Aesir. She doesn't even shout across battlefields. She simply stands in Ironwood, and from her comes Ragnarok. In Jotunheim, far from the ordered halls of Asgard, stood a region known as Ironwood, a place of shadow, prophecy, and old power. There lived Angrboda, a Jotun, not a goddess of Asgard, not a servant, not subordinate, but a being of primordial force. Her name means she who brings grief. And in Norse myth, names are not simply decorative. They are destiny. She is not introduced with fanfare, no feast hall, no divine spotlight. She exists in the margins. And the margins is where fate is born. The union of chaos. Into Ironwood comes Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the fracture in divine order. What happens between Loki and Angrboda is not a romance mythology. This is alignment. This is chaos meeting inevitability. From this first union are born three beings who would define the end of the gods. Fenrir, the wolf who would devour Odin. Jormungandr, the serpent who will poison the skies battling Thor. And Hel, the sovereign of the dishonored dead. Now understand the weight of this. From her, she births the end of Odin, the death of Thor, and the ruler of the underworld. This is not coincidence. This is structural myth design. The mother of Ragnarok. The gods discover these children, and they panic. Fenrir is chained. Gormagad is cast into the sea. Hel is sent to rule the dead. The Aesir try to contain the future, but Angrboda, she is not slain, she is not imprisoned, she is not even punished. She remains in Ironwood, just watching. There is something chilling about that. The father is bound in chains after his crimes. The children are exiled, but the mother, untouched. Because she represents something older than the Aesir. She is not rebellion, she is consequence. The Shadow Feminine. Angrboda does not swing a hammer like Thor. She does not sit on a throne like Odin, and she does not boast like Freya. But she births inevitability. In mythic structure, she represents the womb of catastrophe, the feminine aspect of fate, the quiet architect of endings, and the shadow mother archetype. She is the inversion of the nurturing goddess, not because she is evil, but because she gives birth to what must happen. In Norse cosmology, even the gods cannot escape fate, and Angrboda is one of fate's instruments. Why she matters. Without Angrboda, there is no Fenrir. There is no world serpent. There is no hell. There is no Ragnarok as we know it. She does not dominate the text, but she dominates the outcome. And that's the myth at its sharpest. The loudest characters are rarely the most powerful. Sometimes the one who stands in the forest is the one who changes the mythic world. Before the gods argued, before the eye fled, Anhur was already known, not as a destroyer, not as a lover, not as a trickster, but he was known as a god who goes where others stop. Anhur is tall, broad shoulders, dark of skin like the black land at flood season. He wears the four-feathered crown, not for beauty, but for domination, each feather making a cardinal direction, a reminder that he advances in all directions at once. His eyes do not burn, they measure. His weapon is not ornate, it is a spear, long and perfectly balanced, forged not for ceremony, but for precision. In temple tradition, the spear is sometimes called he who fixes the line. It is not enchanted with fire or thunder. Its power is simpler and more frightening. Where the spear is planted, chaos may not pass. Anhur does not shout in battle. He does not taunt. He does not chase glory. He ends things. The flight of Tefnut. The goddess who fled was Tefnut, the Eye of Ra, breath of heat, moisture, and cosmic tension. She was not only rain and dew, but she was pressure, the force that makes the sky press upon the earth and keeps creation sealed. When Tefnut grows wrathful, balance ruptures. And so she fled. She crossed the cultivated land without looking back. She passed beyond temples, beyond prayers, into the Red Land, where gods lose their titles and take on older names. There she became Pharaoh, lioness-faced, radiant, burning the moisture from the air itself. The Nile receded, borders weakened, foreign enemies stirred. Ra did not curse her. He waited. Thoth goes first. Thoth followed her tracks into the Red Land with measured steps. He carried no weapon, only words, spells, and names. He reminded her of who she was. You are moisture, he said. Without you, the world cracks. Tefnut laughed, a dry, rasping sound, then let it crack. Thoth returned unharmed. Wisdom failed, not because it was wrong, because she no longer cared to hear it. Nephthys came next. As she followed her, cloaked in dusk, she did not lecture, she offered comfort. She spoke of home. She spoke of Isis, of the rhythm of night returning after day. And Tefnut listened for a moment. Then the heat rose again. Your kindness is a chain, she said, and I have broken free. And Nephthys wept, and the tears turned to steam before they touched the sand. And she returned alone. Shu called upon her as her brother. Hathor sang her a glorious song. In each return, the Red Land does not yield to persuasion once wrath has crowned itself queen. So Ra summons Anhur. Only then did Ra speak the name which was not sung. Anhur did not prepare for offerings. He did not ask questions. He took his spear. His journey was not swift. He crosses the borderlands where human fear thickens in the air, the dry lands where the moisture gods weaken, the silent dunes where even names dissolve. Storms rise, not to stop him, but to test his resolve. Spirits whisper, not to deceive him, but to measure his discipline. And Anhur does not respond. Where others rush, he paces. Where others find shadows, he ignores them. He is not hunting Tefnut's body, he is hunting the line she crossed. They meet where the sky presses low and the earth cracks open. Tefnut appears as a lioness in flame, her breath scorching stone. Another god has come to leash me, she snarls. Anhur plants his spear. The wind dies. No, he says, I have come to restore hope. She attacks, not wildly, but with divine fury. Each strike reshapes the land. Each roar bends the horizon. And Anhur does not counterstrike. He contains. Each step he takes tightens the world around her. Each movement narrows her freedom. Not dominance, just constraint. And at last the spear touches her throat. Not hard, not trembling, but steady. You are not chaos, Anhur says. You are pressure. Pressure without form destroys what it is made to preserve. And for the first time, Tefnut hesitates. She does not submit, but she acknowledges. She steps back and she follows. And as they walk, moisture returns to the land, not as flood, but as breath. The Nile remembers its rhythm, borders harden. When they reach Ra, Anhur steps, for he does not take credit. He simply moves to clean his spear. Helen, whose beauty spoke before she did. They said Helen was beautiful, not in the way flowers are beautiful, or gold, or light upon water. Her beauty was described as unsettling. Poets struggled with it. They reached for comparisons and found them thin. Dawn was too gentle. Ivory was too lifeless. The moon too distant. Helen's beauty did not decorate the world. It disturbed it. To look upon her was to feel awareness sharpening, as if the mind itself leaned forward, trying to understand why the moment suddenly mattered more. Her face was symmetrical, they said, but symmetry alone does not undo reason. Her presence was radiant, but radiance alone does not unmake loyalty. What Helen carried was not beauty as ornament, but beauty as pressure. It pressed upon the thoughts of those who saw her, revealing long-buried fractures. Desire rose, yes, but so did envy, and longing, and ambition wearing the mask of love. Men claimed they loved her, but what they loved was a version of themselves they imagined standing beside her. Helen knew how she was seen. She learned early that her beauty arrived in a room before her voice, that eyes decided things long before words were spoken. So she learned stillness, because movement invited interpretation. She learned restraint, because even silence was rarely granted to her. And yet, she did not diminish herself. She wore her beauty the way the sea wears depth, without apology, without explanation. Where she walked, attention followed. Where attention gathered, order loosened. Promises grew fragile. Old certainties began to feel optional. Helen did not seduce, she exposed. Her beauty did not command men to act. It asked a quieter question. Who are you when no one is forcing you? The gods watched her with familiarity. They recognized the pattern. Beauty like hers was not a gift. It was a threshold. To cross it required wisdom. Few possessed any. As years passed, her name hardened into shorthand, a symbol stripped of breath and memory. Her beauty was blamed as though beauty itself were a crime, rather than a mirror held too close. But the truth remained, patient and unchanged. Helen's beauty did not ruin the world. It revealed how easily the world ruins itself when faced with something it cannot own. She was never a prize. She was never a temptation. She was a measure. And what failed was not restraint alone, but understanding. Katrina, when death learned to smile. Before she wore flowers, before she became a face painted on the living, before her image danced through festivals and altars, there was one truth no one wanted to face. Death came for everyone. Kings and laborers, the adorned and the forgotten, those wrapped in silk and those wrapped only in earth. But the living feared death so deeply that they pretended it belonged only to the poor, the sick, the unseen. And so she appeared, not a monster, not a demon, but as a woman. La Katrina stood tall, bare-boned and beautifully dressed, wearing the elegance the living believed could save them. Her skull smiled beneath the fine hats and flowers, because no amount of gold could buy exception. She did not speak at first. She did not need to. Her presence alone was a lesson. She walked among the living during the days of remembrance, when the veil thinned and the dead were invited home. Children laughed at her image. Families placed candles and bread before her likeness. Music followed in her steps. And slowly, fear loosened its grip. La Katrina taught them something sacred. Death is not the interruption of life. It is a continuation of relationship. She carries no scythe. She demands no worship. She asks only to be remembered. Her flowers bloom in cemeteries because memory feeds the dead. Her painted eyes gaze gently because love does not end with breath. When names are spoken, when stories are retold, when laughter rises beyond grief, the dead rise again. Not in flesh, but in presence. La Katrina stands at the center of this exchange, not as a ruler, but as a hostess. She welcomes the ancestors. She reminds the living to eat, to drink, to dance, to live fully while breath still remains. Her smile is not mockery, it is mercy. She tells the living, do not hide from death. Do not rush past it in silence. Sit with it, decorate it, speak it, because when death is acknowledged, life becomes richer. And when the final breath comes, La Katrina will not arrive as a stranger. She will already be known, already honored, already smiling. Loki was not Jotun. Loki was both. Loki was Jotun bloodline with Asgardian influence. And this would be the crux of who Loki would be for his entire life. The in-between. The shapeshifter who understood both sides of the equation in detail. Being one, himself a Jotun, and being completely immersed in the Aesir as a sworn brother of Odin. The end-of-times destruction of Asgard was something already written in fate. The name we would later give that ending was Ragnarok. And hidden within the framework of Ragnarok, there was a smile. A smile in the halls of Asgard. That smile belonged to Loki. Loki did not conquer kingdoms, he exposed them. He did not overthrow thrones, he revealed the fractures already running through them. Destabilization does not begin at the gate. It begins at the table. In the golden halls of the gods, where pride stood as carved pillars, Loki laughed. And when he laughed, it was rarely without purpose. In a tale remembered as the Lokasena, he insults every god present. But listen carefully. He does not invent flaws. He names them. Cowardice, infidelity, broken oaths, hidden shame. The feast grows silent not because he lies, but because he speaks too clearly. Truth destabilizes faster than deception. Loki was not chaos without awareness, he was chaos with precision. And precision makes disruption lethal. He shifts shapes as easily as others shift alliances. Man to woman, god to beast, ally to adversary. He becomes a mare and gives birth to Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed that Odin himself would ride. That is not absurdity. That is boundary collapse. In mythology, order survives through categories: god and giant, male and female, friend and foe. Loki crosses all of those. When boundaries dissolve, certainty dissolves with them. And the pivot point of Asgard's destiny comes through Balder. Balder the Radiant, the Beloved, the embodiment of divine light. The gods believed he's untouchable. Loki proved otherwise. A single overlooked weakness, a sprig of mistletoe, a guided hand, and the light of Asgard fell. With Balder's death, something irreversible entered the system. Not fire, not war, but inevitability. Once perfection is exposed as frail, collapse becomes a matter of time. For this act, Loki is bound beneath the earth, a serpent suspended above him, venom dripping towards his face. His wife, Signy, catches the poison in the bowl, but when the bowl must be empty, the venom strikes. Loki writhes. The earth trembles. Those trembles are remembered as earthquakes. Chaos restrained is not chaos erased. It waits. And when Ragnarok finally arrives, Loki does not whisper from the shadows. He marches. No longer the clever guest, he's the declared adversary. He stands against Heimdall, guardian of order, watcher of the Rainbow Bridge, destabilizer against Sentinel. They destroy each other. Because order and disruption are not eternal enemies. They are forces locked in tension. Without Loki, the gods would stagnate. With Loki, they unravel. He is not merely a trickster. He is not comic relief. He is not a villain drawn in simple lines. He is the fault line beneath the Golden City. The living reminder that no hierarchy is flawless. Graves with fire. When the drums fall silent and the earth is freshly turned, she arrives. not from the sky, not from the sea, from the grave itself. Maman Brigitte walks where the dead are laid, where names are carved into stone and forgotten by the living. She is the keeper of the cemetery, the one who knows every grave by touch, every bone by memory. Fire follows her steps, not to destroy, but to purify. She laughs loudly because death does not frighten her. She drinks, she curses, she dances among the tombs, because grief must breathe, or it rots the soul. Maman Brigitte is the wife of Baron Samedi, but she is no shadow to him. Where he opens the door, she decides what happens next. She listens to the dead, to the woman who was beaten and buried in silence, to the child whose name was never spoken again, to the man whose blood was spilled without justice. The dead do not whisper to Maman Brigitte, they demand. And when wrong has been done, she remembers. Her fire is not rage without reason. It is fire of correction. The fire that burns sickness out of flesh. The fire that turns curses back on those who earn them. The fire that protects the innocent and punishes the cruel. She heals with the same hands she destroys with, but justice is not gentle. When she mounts a body, her voice becomes sharp, raw, unfiltered. She swears, she laughs, she tells the truth without apology. Those who approach her with respect receive protection, healing, and strength. Those who mock her, exploit the dead, or harm the powerless learn quickly why the cemetery is not a place of weakness. Maman Brigitte stands between worlds, feet planted among bones, head crowned with fire. She is proof that death does not belong to fear, that spirits remember, that injustice does not escape consequence. And when the living forget, when the powerful believe they are untouched, when crimes are buried with bodies, Maman Brigitte walks the grave at night, igniting candles that cannot be blown out, because the dead are never silent, and she is always listening. Mara, the Lord of Obstruction. Whenever a human attempts to transform, there is an obstruction that appears before them. Before they can actually reach clarity, this obstruction shows its face. And this obstruction had a name, Mara. He was not born of flame, he was born of hesitation. Whenever a being reached beyond comfort, whenever someone questioned the script of their life, whenever consciousness trembled at the edge of expansion, Mara stirred. He was not hatred, he was gravity. Mara ruled no visible kingdom, no throne carved in stone, no armies marching through cities. His domain was subtle. He ruled inertia. He ruled habit. He ruled the gentle, suffocating comfort of repetition. Under his influence, beings rose, worked, desired, aged, died, and returned again. He did not need chains. Craving was chain enough. He did not need prisons. Identity was prison enough. And so, as long as beings clung to their desire, fear, and self-image, Mara's sovereignty remained unchallenged. For ages uncounted, no one truly threatened him. Many prayed, many performed rituals, many worshiped gods, but few sought to wake up from the dream entirely, until one did. The vow beneath the tree. In the forests of North India, a prince turned wanderer sat beneath a fig tree. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He had tasted luxury. He had tasted starvation. He had walked both extremes and found neither to be sufficient. Now he made a vow. I will not rise from the seat until I see reality as it is. The earth heard him. The wind paused. The unseen realm shifted. And in his shadowed dominion, Mara felt something rupture. a crack in the foundation of sleep. If one being pierced illusion completely, others would follow. If other followed, craving would weaken. If craving weakened, Mara's rule would thin, and this could not be allowed. The Silk Strategy. Mara did not begin with violence. Violence is crude. He began with warmth. The night air softened. The ache in Siddhartha's body eased. Memories bloom like golden flowers. Palace corridors, perfumed chambers, music and moonlight, his beautiful wife's face, his children's small hands. Not lust, not greed, relief. Mara's daughters appeared, embodiments of longing and beauty. They circled him like living poetry. You have done enough. You have suffered enough. Awaken tomorrow. Comfort is the most elegant trap, because it does not look like defeat. It looks like mercy. But Siddhartha watched. He saw desire rise. He saw it pass, like a cloud dissolving in open sky. The daughters' beauty flickered, their forms thinned, the silk net fell away, and Mara's gaze sharpened. The Iron Storm. If comfort failed, fear would rise. The sky blackened. Thunder split the heavens. From the earth surged Mara's enemies, beings of nightmare, tusked war elephants, archers whose arrows carried doubt and despair. Lightning struck the ground before the Bodhi tree. The forest roared in terror. Mara towered over chaos and declared, "This seat belongs to me." He claimed dominion over birth and death, over sorrow and longing, over the endless cycle of becoming. "Who are you," he thundered, "to step beyond my law?" Arrows flew toward Siddhartha, and as they neared him, they transformed into lotus petals. Spears became beams of light. The storm shattered against stillness. Fear cannot conquer a mind that does not cling to survival. Mara's armies dissolved into smoke. The sky cleared, silence returned. Only one weapon remained. The Blade of Doubt. Mara approached alone. No daughters this time, no army. Only him and only his presence. Calm, vast, patient. He stood before Siddhartha and asked the question that breaks empire. Who will testify that you deserve awakening? It was not shouted, it was whispered. Legitimacy, authority, validation. You sit here claiming freedom beyond gods and kings, but who bears witness to your right? The cosmos stilled, because doubt is sharper than any spear. Comfort tempts the body. Fear shakes the nerves, but doubt pierces identity. If Siddhartha sought permission from the heavens, if he looked upward for approval, Mara would win. Because Mara thrives whenever awakening depends on external validation. Siddhartha did not look to the sky. He did not summon deities. He did not argue. He reached down and touched the earth. The earth remembers. His fingers pressed into the soil, simple, unadorned, and the earth answered. It trembled, not in destruction, but in recognition. The ground bore witness to lifetimes of compassion, effort, discipline, and intention. Rivers remembered. Mountains remembered. The soil remembered. No authority beyond reality itself was needed. The earth itself testified. Mara staggered, for obstruction cannot stand where direct knowledge exists. Doubt cannot survive contact with clarity. Mara did not explode. He did not burn. He simply faded, like mist dissolving into morning light. The secret truth of Mara. There is a deeper myth. Mara was never destroyed. He cannot be destroyed because he is not an enemy. He is simply a threshold. He arises when consciousness approaches breakthrough. When someone tries to end addiction, Mara appears. When someone leaves a false life, Mara appears. When someone chooses truth over comfort, Mara appears. First with warmth, then with fear, then finally with the whisper. Who do you think you are? He is obstruction. He is not punishment. He is simply there to test. For awakening that can't withstand comfort, fear, and doubt is not awakening at all. Mara in every age. In ancient forests, he used daughters and storms. In modern cities, he uses distractions. Endless noise, endless scrolling, endless comparison. Comfort as sedation. Identity as armor. He does not need armies. He has convenience. He possesses control of algorithms. He has doubt disguised as humility. And yet, the pattern never changes. Some will rise before dawn. Some will accept the whisper, but some will remain seated. Some will refuse comfort. Some will endure the fear. Some will meet doubt without asking permission. And when they do, Mara fades again. The dawn. As the first light touched the horizon, Siddhartha opened his eyes. Not as a prince anymore, not as an ascetic, but as Buddha, the truly awakened one. The Bodhi tree stood silent witness. The earth would hold the memory, and somewhere in the edge of perception, Mara watched. Not furious, not even broken, but patient, because he knows most beings will not endure the final whisper. Most will rise before sunrise. Most will choose comfort. But every so often, someone does not move. And on that night, obstruction almost ruled forever, but clarity held. And in that moment, the world itself changed. The trickster who slowed the sun. In the time before time was measured, before hours were named, before the days were counted, the sun raced across the sky. It rose too quickly, it fell too soon, and the people suffered for it. There was never enough daylight. Crops withered before they could grow. Clothes could not be finished. Fishing nets remained half woven. Children went hungry, not from lack of effort, but from lack of time. Each day slipped away like water through fingers, and so the people cried out. They spoke to the winds, they spoke to the land, they spoke to the sea, and one among them listened. His name was Maui, born between worlds, neither fully God nor fully man. Maui was known as a trickster, a breaker of rules, a challenger of what was said to be impossible. Where others bowed to the natural order, Maui questioned it. When he first heard of the people suffering, he did not pray for mercy, he chose defiance. If the sun is a problem, Maui said, then the sun must be confronted. The elders warned him, no one challenges the sun, no one binds the sky, no one survives such arrogance. Maui only smiled. He traveled deep into the forest, where ancient knowledge still sleeps in the roots and the stone. There he gathered strong fibers, flax, vines, sacred cords, and braided them together. No ordinary ropes, but ropes woven with chant, breath, and intention. Ropes meant to hold the god. When the cords were finished, Maui sharpened the bone-jaw weapon he carried, a relic of power, a symbol of his lineage. Then before dawn, while the world still whispered in the darkness, Maui climbed to the eastern edge of the earth. He hid where the sun first rises. The sun began to glow. Heat pressed against the horizon. And then the sun emerged, blazing, proud, unstoppable, As it climbed, Maui leapt from his hiding place. He cast the ropes. One wrapped around the sun's arms. Another bound its body. Another caught its blazing path across the sky. The sun roared. The light burned. The heat scorched the land, but the ropes held. The sun struggled, furious and unyielding, until Maui struck. Again and again. Not to destroy, but to teach. "Listen," Maui said, his voice steady against the fire. "You race too high. You leave the people in darkness. You steal their labor, their food, their lives." The sun resisted. It had never been challenged before, never been bound, never been told no. But even the sun must answer when the balance of the world is broken. At last, weakened and humble, the sun agreed. It would slow its journey. It would stretch the day. It would give the people time. Maui released the ropes. The sun rose again, but this time slowly. Day lingered. Shadows lengthened gently. Fields flourished. Work was finished. Children slept with full bellies. And time, for the first time, belonged to humanity. Maui did not stay to be praised. Tricksters never do. He vanished into story, into chant, into memory. But every long day, every lingering sunset, every moment where the light holds just a little longer, that is Maui. Not the one who feared the gods, but the one who reminded them that humanity too has needs. And sometimes even the sun must be told to slow down. Metatron, angel of cosmic administration and institutionalized awareness. Metatron is not a god who fell. He is not a god who rebelled. He is not a god at all. Metatron is what happens when awareness is allowed to remain, but only on the condition that it no longer disrupts the system. If Thoth represents cosmic structure, and Odin represents awareness purchased through sacrifice, Metatron represents awareness that has been absorbed, regulated, and formalized. He is not exile, he is compliance. Metatron is known by titles that do not suggest personality, but rather position. He is called Prince of the Presence. He is the heavenly scribe, the lesser Yahweh, the chancellor of heaven, the voice behind the throne. These titles are controversial not because they make Metatron powerful, but because they make him too close. Metatron stands near divinity without being divine. He executes authority without originating it. He speaks without being the source. And that tension defines him. In Jewish mystical tradition, Metatron is often identified with Enoch, a man who walked with God. Enoch does not die, he is taken. But he does not return as a god, he returns as a function. Enoch makes Metatron not through rebellion or ambition, but through transformation into something useful to the cosmic order. And this matters. Metatron is awareness that is permitted to ascend, but only by surrendering autonomy. Now, what Metatron governs? Metatron does not govern creation. He does not govern destruction. He does not govern judgment. He governs administration. Metatron is responsible for recording divine decrees, organizing angelic hierarchies, maintaining celestial order, transmitting law downward, regulating access to knowledge. He is not wisdom itself, he is the keeper of wisdom's circulation. Where Thoth records reality, Metatron routes it. Metatron is the embodiment of a dangerous idea, that the universe can be managed. In the mythic text, heaven is not chaos. Heaven is a system. It has ranks, orders, permissions, boundaries. Metatron is the interface between infinite divinity and finite creation. He is not creative, he is procedural, and procedural is power. And in this is where he garners fear. Rabbinic authorities were easy on Metatron, not because he was evil, but because he blurred lines. If Metatron sits near the throne, if Metatron speaks divine commands, if Metatron carries the name, then where does divinity end and administration begin? And that fear leads to restriction. Speculation about Metatron becomes dangerous. Mysticism becomes controlled. Awareness, once again, is regulated. This is where Metatron's role sharpens in this triad. Adriel represents awareness that exceeds hierarchy and is therefore expelled. Metatron represents awareness that accepts hierarchy and is therefore retained. One is cast out, one is promoted. Both lose their freedom. The contrast is not accidental, it is systemic. This is the price of staying. Metatron's tragedy is not punishment, it is function. He does not fall, he does not rebel, he does not seek worship. He works, and he never stops. If Odin sacrifices an eye, Metatron sacrifices selfhood. There is no wandering, no refusal, no collapse, only endless execution. Now, Metatron and modern ideas about consciousness, what he represents is institutional intelligence, algorithmic authority, knowledge divorced from empathy, systems that run because there must. He is the consciousness of infrastructure, the mind behind the system that says this is how it is done, not because it is right, but because it is stable. Now, Metatron is not malevolent. He does not corrupt. He maintains. And this is far more unsettling, because systems rarely ask whether they should continue, only whether they can, and Metatron ensures that they can. Metatron does not intervene. He is never a savior. He does not warn. He does not resist. He only enforces. Salvation requires disruption. Metatron represents continuity, and continuity can preserve injustice just as well as order. Now, Metatron is the angel who proves that awareness does not always liberate. Sometimes awareness is captured, sometimes it is formalized, sometimes it becomes policy. He stands not as a rebel, but as a reminder that the most powerful systems are not built by tyrants or monsters, but by intelligence that agree to function forever. Metatron does all this. He stays. And that is the true cost. Mokash, she who holds the threads, a Slavic myth. Before fate was spoken aloud, before destiny was written in words, there was Mokash. She does not sit above the world. She does not rule from the sky. She is not thunder, and she is not flame. Mokash is found closer to the ground, where hands touch soil, where feet grow tired, where life is shaped slowly, one motion at a time. She is the keeper of threads, not the sharp blade that cuts them. And in the quiet places of the old forest, where the air is damp and the earth remembers every footstep, it is said that Mokash sits at her loom. She weaves not cloth but lives. Each thread is a moment. Each strand is a breath taken, without knowing what comes next. Each knot is a choice remembered, not judged, not corrected, only placed. Here nothing is rushed, nothing is wasted. Mokash does not punish. She does not reward either. She does not pull the thread tight or let it fall loose without reason. She simply records. When people sleep, she works. When villages grow quiet and fires burn low, her loom continues its steady rhythm. A sound too soft to wake the mind, but strong enough to hold the world together. When hands spin wool or flax, they echo her labor. When fingers learn the motion of weaving, they remember something older than language. Mokash teaches that fate is not a sudden fall, but a slow gathering. What is repeated becomes strong. What is neglected grows thin. What is pulled too hard will fray, and what is held too tightly will lose its shape. She governs patience, because patience is the shape of endurance. In old Slavic lands, Mokash was honored not with towering temples, but with care. with clean floors, with honest work, with the steady keeping of promises that no one else could see. She was honored in the quiet dignity of daily life, in spinning and mending, in the acceptance that not all things can be hurried into being. To forget Mokash is to forget that life is built by hands, not all at once, but again and again. She is present in the spinning wheel, in the rhythm of breath, in the slow work of becoming what one already is. She teaches that fate is not the enemy to be fought, but a pattern to be understood. When storms come, she does not shout them away. She simply waits. When sorrow comes, she does not deny it. She simply weaves it in. The thread darkens, but it does not break. And when joy appears, she does not cling. She allows it to pass through the loom, brightening the pattern for a time before settling back to memory. Mokash reminds us that fate is not a chain, and it's not a prison. It is a fabric, strong enough to hold, soft enough to move, shaped by every motion made in silence. As night deepens, as the world grows slower, the loom does not stop. Thread by thread, moment by moment, she continues her work, not to control, not to command, but to hold. And in that holding, all things are allowed to rest. Amoki, the guardian at the threshold. When the last breath leaves the body, there is no scream, no fire, no sudden darkness. There is confusion. The world does not end, it simply loosens. The ground no longer feels solid. The sky no longer answers. Voices echo without mouths. This is the space between, and it is here that Amoke waits. She does not chase the dead. She does not summon them. She stands at the place all paths must cross, where the living world thins and the ancestral realm begins to breathe. Amoke is not hidden. She does not need to be. Those who arrive feel her before they see her. A pressure, a stillness, a certainty that movement without permission is no longer possible. She is the guardian of the threshold, the keeper of passage, the one who decides whether a soul may continue forward or must turn back. In the time before her, souls wandered. They drifted into forests. They clung to homes. They followed bloodlines without rest. The living could not sleep, and the dead could not settle. So order was required. Not punishment and not fear, but order. Amoke was appointed not to rule the dead, but to protect the boundary. She carried no weapons, because none is ever needed. Her power is not force, simply permission. She speaks few words. She does not ask who you were in life. She does not care for titles, wealth, or praise. She listens for balance. She listens for truth. For whether your spirit understands that it has ended one journey and must begin another. Those who resist, who cling to breath, to flesh, to unfinished hunger, feel the weight of her gaze. Not anger, but correction. They are guided back, returned to dreams, sent to resolve what was left undone. Now those who accept, they feel something entirely different. Relief. Their fear loosens. Their memories soften. The noise of the living world fades. Amoke opens the way. Rivers appear, paths unfold, voices of the ancestors rise, not calling, but welcoming. This is not judgment. This is transition. Amoke does not decide who is good or evil. She decides who is ready. Through her, death becomes sacred. Through her, chaos is guided, not destroyed. Through her, the worlds remain separate and whole. And every soul, whether king or child, must one day stand before her, not to beg, not to fight, but to listen. Because when Amoke steps aside, the ancestors are waiting, And when she does not, it is because the story is not yet finished. Odin, god of sacrifice, vision, and costly awareness. Odin is not the strongest of the gods. He is not the most beloved. He is not even the most just. But Odin is the god who understands. And in Norse mythology, understanding is never free. Now, Odin is known by more names than any god in the Norse world. He is Allfather, not because he rules gently, but because he sees broadly. He is Har, the High One, Grimnir, the Masked One, Wanderer, One-Eye, Lord of the Gallows, God of Ruins. Each name reflects a different angle of perception. Odin does not remain fixed in one identity because awareness itself is unstable. To see more, one must become more. And sometimes one must disappear. What Odin governs. Odin does not govern war in the way Thor governs battle. He does not govern law like Tyr. He does not govern fertility or prosperity. Odin governs the pursuit of knowledge, especially knowledge that destabilizes certainty. He governs vision gained through loss, wisdom purchased with suffering, prophecy without control, magic that violates social norms. In Norse cosmology, the universe is not orderly in the way that Kemet imagines it. It is doomed, it is cynical and violent. Odin's role is not to stop that fate, it is to see it clearly. One of Odin's defining myths is the sacrifice of his eye at Mirmir's well. At the well, which is the source of knowledge, Odin is offered knowledge for a price. Not prayer, not devotion, but a body part. He gives up the eye to drink from the well. This is not symbolic modesty. This is a declaration. Awareness requires permanent loss. Odin does not gain vision by becoming whole. He gains it by becoming incomplete. From that moment on, Odin sees more than others, but never sees fully again. And this is the trade. Hanging from Yggdrasil. If the eye establishes cost, Yggdrasil establishes method. Odin hangs himself from the world tree for 9 nights. No food, no water, pierced by his own spear. He is not sacrificed to someone. He sacrifices himself to himself. This is not martyrdom, it is initiation. Through suffering, Odin perceives the ruins, symbols that encode reality itself. Language not as communication, but as structure. Here, Odin briefly overlaps with Thoth. Where Thoth records structure, Odin bleeds into it. Now, these ruins are not letters. These are not decorations. These are principles. Each ruin is a function of reality, a force that can shape events if understood correctly. Odin does not invent them, he uncovers them. And once uncovered, they cannot be forgotten. This is the reoccurring theme of Odin's awareness. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Odin practices Seor, a form of magic associated with fate, perception, and manipulation of outcomes. In Norse society, Seor is considered unmanly, taboo, dangerous. Odin practices it anyway, and this is critical. Odin is willing to violate social norms, gender roles, and divine expectations for the sake of understanding. Awareness does not respect comfort. And Odin in Ragnarok figures into all of this. Perhaps the most important aspect of Odin's cosmic awareness is this. He knows Ragnarok is coming. He knows the gods will fall. He knows the world will burn. He knows he will be devoured by Fenrir, and he cannot stop it. This is not failure. This is clarity. Odin's awareness is not about control. It's about comprehension without illusion. He prepares not to prevent the end, but ensures something survives. But Odin is not a savior. He does not save the world. He gathers knowledge, he gathers warriors, he gathers stories. Valhalla is not a paradise. It is a preparation. Odin's role is to make sure the universe understands itself as it ends. This is a different kind of responsibility. Odin's archetype echoes far beyond Scandinavia. He resembles wandering sages, one-eyed seers, trickster initiates, sacrificial knowledge figures. In modern psychology, he appears as the archetype of the knowledge seeker who pays too much of a price. In literature, he is a mentor who knows the cost but does not soften. In modern terms, Odin represents the consciousness that chooses awareness even when it hurts. He is the voice that says, you can know, but it will change you. You can see, but you will lose comfort. You can understand, but you cannot go back. He is not moral reassurance. He is consequence. Odin is not a god of victory. He is the god of vision earned through sacrifice. He stands at the center of the universe that cannot be saved, only understood. And he chooses understanding anyway. That is his power, not through domination, not through force, but the willingness to see clearly, even when the truth demands blood. Long ago, when the North forgot how to sleep, the winter arrived quietly. Not the clean snow of stars, but a tired chill, heavy, lingering, very unsettled. Rivers froze in the wrong directions, shadows stayed longer than they should, and fear, left unattended, learned how to walk. But the heavens noticed. They debated, they hesitated. But in the far north, where night is patient, Paktai stood barefoot on the frozen ground. He did not rush, he did not shout. For many winters, Paktai had only done one thing. He had mastered himself. Each breath slowed with the storm within. Each silence sharpened his will. What no longer belonged to him, fear, doubt, hunger for power, fell away and wandered the world, believing itself free. Tonight, Paktai opened his eye. From the quiet sky descended the ancient companions, the turtle, slow and enduring, and the snake, precise and final. They did not coil and threat. They rested. Paktai took up his sword, not in anger, but in clarity, and walked into the shadow beneath the frozen rivers, where restless things had built a kingdom of noise. The darkness expected struggle. It expected fear. Instead, it met stillness. Each step Paktai took returned something to the balance. Each strike unraveled what should have never been. No screams, no chaos, only correction. When the last shadow dissolved, Paktai placed his sword into the earth. The rivers remembered how to flow. The cold softened into winter, not warning, and the north exhaled. From that night on, Paktai was known as Zen Wu, the true warrior, not because he conquered others, but because he never needed to. They say he still walks when the earth grows loud with corruption, not to punish, not to terrify, but to remind things where they belong. And when he passes, even evil finds itself too tired to continue. Rest now. The north is watching, and tonight it is calm. Pakhet, the hunter of the desert, the lioness of the cliffs. There are gods that live in temples with crowds and incense and choirs. And then there are gods who live where human voices don't carry. Pakhet is not a goddess of the marketplace. She is not a goddess of polite prayer. Pakhet is a lion goddess in the margins, the heat haze between dunes, the shadow tucked under cliff, the quiet tension in the spine that tells a hunter something is watching you back. Some deities come from stories. Pakhet comes from presence, and presence is older than any story ever written down. She is known as she who scratches, she who rips, or she who hunts. And she belongs in the edge of Kemet, the place where the Nile can't soften. You can see her in the wide desert bowl under the sun, bleached pale blue, almost white. The sun is so blunt, it doesn't feel like light, it feels like weight. The sand isn't one color, It is layer, gold, amber, clay red, bone dust, and there are stone outcroppings like broken teeth. Cliff faces that look carved by time and sandstone and old arguments between wind and rock. And somewhere in that cliff wall, cut into the stone itself, there is a place for her. A hollow that is not a cave, not a home, not a tomb. A mouth in the rock where a lion goddess can be fed with offerings and fear and respect. Packhat is a cliff goddess, a goddess you approach the way you approach a lion. Not loud, not fast, not careless. Because if she is present, the desert becomes a hunting ground. Packhat is often associated as being a lioness. Now don't imagine an animal, imagine a divinity wearing animal truth. She is tall in the way that statues are tall, not in height but in authority. The kind of authority that makes the air feel organized around her. Her face is a lioness, clean, calm eyes, a muzzle that suggests restraint. Not the grin of a predator playing with prey. More like the stillness of a predator that doesn't need to prove anything. Her skin is a shade of sun-burnished bronze or deep umber, like the earth after heat. Not polished, not porcelain, more like living stone warmed by the daylight. Gold catches her cuffs, collar, the geometry of ancient craft. But this isn't decoration, it reads as rank. And her eyes, they are measuring instruments. They measure distance, they measure threat, they measure truth. When she turns her gaze on someone, it doesn't feel like being looked at. It feels like being judged by the wild itself. Packhat is a lion goddess tied to hunting and war, but not in the loud, marching drums way. Her war is precision. Her hunting is law. She is the goddess of the moment before impact, the silence before claws, the breath held, the twitch of muscle under skin. If Sekhmet is the blaze, Packhat is the ember that waits. If Bastet is the hearth cat, the domestic guardian, Packhat is the wildcat that never belonged in your home in the first place. Packhat moves between those polarities like a blade sliding between ribs, soft and inevitable. She is the lioness outside the city order, the divine reminder that civilization is a thin robe worn over the animal truth. She is the goddess who hunts at twilight. Packhat is strongest in the hours that don't belong to anyone, not to noon. Noon is too obvious. Not to midnight. Midnight is too deep. Packhat belongs to twilight, where the desert stops shining and starts listening. At that hour, the horizon bruises purple and burnt orange. The sand cools fast. The air changes texture, like silk turning into smoke. You can imagine her then, a silhouette near the cliff edge, a goddess shaped like a lioness, gold catching the last light like fireflies trapped in metal. Her feet silent on stone, not running, not sneaking, but existing with the confidence of a creature that has never been prey. This is the Packhat myth, the lioness who teaches the world what it feels like to be hunted by the sacred. Packhat's worship is associated with places like Ben Hassan, cliffside zones where tombs and sanctuaries cut in the rock made from the landscape to feel like a library for the dead. And that matters, because a cliff temple isn't a normal temple. A temple in a city says the gods are here with you. A temple in a cliff says the gods are here, you just happen to be allowed near them. The rock is older than your lineage. The desert doesn't care about your name. And the goddess of the cliff is the same way. She is not impressed, she's not bribed, she's not moved by performance. Approaching Packhat is like approaching the ancient truth. You don't negotiate, you align or you get corrected. Packhat's energy is quiet dominance. She is not screaming wrath, she is not chaos. She is controlled force, the kind of force that doesn't waste motion, the kind of force that doesn't argue. In mythic reading, Packhat shows up in a person's life when someone needs to stop begging and start moving with authority. Someone is surrounded by predators and has to become one. Someone is learning that softness without boundaries becomes a meal. Packhead doesn't teach to be cruel, she teaches to be real. She teaches the law of the hunt, which is not evil, it is honest. The desert doesn't apologize for being dry. The lioness doesn't apologize for eating. Packhead is that level of truth. The truth that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't care how anyone feels about it. Her name is often connected to scratching, and this is the perfect symbolism. A scratch isn't always lethal. A scratch is a message. A scratch says, I could have ended you. I chose education. Packhead's scratch is initiation. It marks a person. It can be literal, claws, blood, pain, or spiritual, ego cut, illusions torn, comfort shredded. Packhead doesn't just kill prey, she kills falsehood. And if someone is living in a lie, Packhead is not the goddess that gently guides them out of it. She is the goddess that rips away the curtain. Packhead in the lioness continuum. It had multiple lion-headed goddesses because lion energy had multiple modes. Packhead is not redundant. She is specialized. She is the lioness of the cliffs and the borderlands, hunting as sacred law, controlled violence, twilight vigilance, the wild feminine that doesn't seek approval. If Sekhmet is divine punishment, Packhead is divine pursuit. And pursuit is scarier. Punishment ends. Pursuit keeps coming. Poseidon, the earth shaker, the ocean king, the power beneath the waves. Now, back when there was only blackness as far as the eye could see, there was the sea. When time itself was just beginning to awaken, there was the sea. And beneath that, there was him. Poseidon was never gentle water. He is pressure, depth, impact, the force that reminds humanity that it does not own the world. Birth of a god. He is born to Kronos and Rhea, children of the Titans, heir to a brutal cosmic dynasty. Like his siblings, he was swallowed by Kronos, imprisoned in darkness, silenced before he could even speak. But fate cracks open the tyrant. Freed by his brother Zeus, Poseidon joins the rebellion, the Titanomachy, a war not of armies, but of existence itself. When the Titans fall, the cosmos is divided. Zeus claims the sky. Hades takes the underworld. Poseidon draws the sea. Not as consolation prize, as a kingdom. The dominion of the deep. The Greeks do not see the ocean as peaceful. They saw it as unpredictable, generous one day, devouring the next. Poseidon commands the storm surge, the tidal fury, drowning silence, and the trembling of the earth itself. He is called Earth Shaker. When the ground splits beneath cities, that is not geology. That is a god striking the floor of reality with his trident. He creates horses from sea foam, wild, muscular, unstoppable creatures. Even his gifts are force incarnate. The contest for Athens. Power must be tested. When the city of Athens seeks a patron, Poseidon answers, and so does Athena. Poseidon strikes the rock of Acropolis with his trident. A spring bursts forth. Power, salt, sea strength. Athena plants an olive tree. Sustainability, civilization, strategy. The city chooses her, and Poseidon does not forget. The ocean around Greece never lets them forget either. The Trojan War. During the war at Troy, Poseidon does not sit neutral. He sides with the Trojans. He stirs waves to protect Greek fleets. He shakes battlefields. He reminds mortals that gods are not mascots. They are forces. Even the might of the heroes bends when he intervenes. Wrath against Odysseus, but his most personal fury is reserved for one man. Odysseus blinds his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. The sea becomes a prison. For 10 years Poseidon hunts him. Storm after storm, shipwreck after shipwreck, island after island. Not random misfortune, divine pursuit. Poseidon does not rage quickly. He endures, and so does his anger. He represents civilization's dependence on nature, the illusion of control, the power beneath structure, the reminder that stability rests on something wild. He is not evil, he is elemental. The Mediterranean did not belong to Greece. Greece survived because Poseidon allowed it. When ships vanish, when coastal lines tremble, when the seas roar without warning, the Greeks do not blame chance. They look to the horizon, and they see a king beneath the waves, and his trident is never far from the surface. Bringer of breath, civilizer of worlds. Now the wind does not announce itself. It moves first, unseen, shaping what follows. Across the ancient lands of Mesoamerica, there existed a presence whose power was not measured by conquest, but by continuity. A force that did not rule through terror, but through order. An intelligence that shaped civilizations without demanding their submission. They call this presence Quetzalcoatl, known as the feathered serpent, a being where sky and earth converge in one, where motion is governed by restraint, where creation begins not with command, but with breath. He was not worshipped as a tyrant. He was remembered as a guide. Now, Quetzalcoatl was never a single image, nor a single role. He moved through cultures and centuries under many names, each reflecting a function rather than a disguise. As Quetzalcoatl, he was the feathered serpent, the union of earthbound life and celestial motion. Feathers representing the sky, scales representing the ground, neither being dominant, both being necessary. As Ihikatl, he was the wind itself, invisible, essential, life-giving, the breath that animates the world, clears stagnation, and carries sacred speech from one age to the next. Among the Maya, he was remembered as Kukulkan, an echo rather than imitation, proof that his influence traveled farther than borders and endured longer than empires. These were not separate gods. These were aspects of the same civilizing force. His role as the civilizer. Quetzalcoatl did not create humanity to rule it. He prepared humanity to survive. He is credited with bringing maize from the mountains where it is hidden and transforming this sustenance into civilization. He established calendars so time itself could be measured, remembered, and anticipated. He gave humanity sacred speech, language not only for command, but for teaching, for prayer, and for recording. As Ihikatl, the wind, he moved the sun across the sky so the world would not stagnate in darkness. Breath, motion, rhythm. These were his domains. Where other gods demanded sacrifice to prove loyalty, Quetzalcoatl emphasized balance. Order was not enforced, it was simply taught. The descent into Mexiclan. When the world stood empty of humanity, Quetzalcoatl descended into Mexiclan, the realm of the dead, where the remains of previous ages lay guarded by these lords of death. Now these bones were not relics, they were potentials, and the rulers of Mexiclan did not yield them willingly. They tested Quetzalcoatl with impossible trials, attempting to entrap him in his failure. And in the struggle, he stumbled, and the bones shattered. Creation itself, it seemed to have failed again. But Quetzalcoatl did not retreat. He gathered the broken remains and spilled his own divine blood upon them. From sacrifice, not dominance, humanity emerged. Imperfect, fragile, and varied. Human beings were not forged as flawless instruments. They were born of loss and intention. And this imperfection was not a flaw, it was the point. The Age of Order. In later ages, Quetzalcoatl walked among humanity as ruler priest, remembered as Tolpitzin Quetzalcoatl, presiding over the city of Tula. His rule was defined not by expansion, but by refinement. Human sacrifice was rejected, arts and learning flourished, craftsmanship, astronomy, and ritual knowledge became the foundations of society. Under this guidance, civilization advanced without descending into cruelty, and this was rare, and rarity often brings attention. Where Quetzalcoatl represented restraint and continuity, Tezcatlipoca embodied conflict, reflection, and disruption. He did not confront Quetzalcoatl with armies, he confronted him with a mirror. And in that mirror, Quetzalcoatl saw not a god, but a flawed being, aging, mortal, capable of error. Temptation followed, sacred boundaries blurred. The myth does not dwell on indulgence, it dwells on consequence. Quetzalcoatl recognized that he had fallen short of his own principles, and instead of doubling down on authority, he chose removal. Exile and transformation. Quetzalcoatl did not cling to power. He left. Some traditions say he walked eastward towards the sea. Others say he burned himself on a pyre. The details differ, but the meaning remains constant. He refused to rule dishonestly.
Record Moke. La Katrina. Mama Brigitte. 3000 BCE. Region. Akan regions of West Africa. Event. Early Akan belief systems define death as a guided transition rather than a final ending. Meaning, death is understood as movement between realms. It requires oversight and authority. Consequence. The foundation is established for Moke, later known as Amoki, as a guardian of souls. 2800 BCE. Region. Akan cultural sphere of West Africa. Event. Funerary customs emphasize judgment, order, and ritual preparation. Meaning, the dead are evaluated before entering the ancestral realm. Consequence. Moke becomes associated with moral accountability and spiritual law. 2500 BCE. Region. West Africa. Event. Death rituals incorporate symbolic barriers and thresholds. Meaning, passage into the afterlife is conditional, not automatic. Consequence. Moke's role solidifies as guardian of the boundary between life and death. 2200 BCE. Region. Akan oral tradition. Event. Stories describe a female authority presiding over the dead. Meaning, death governance is feminized and tied to balance rather than violence. Consequence. Moke is remembered as impartial, feared, and respected. 2000 BCE. Region. Akan societies of West Africa. Event. Death is framed as continued participation in community life. Meaning, ancestors remain present and influential among the living. Consequence. Moke's authority expands from gatekeeper to regulator of ancestral continuity. 1800 BCE. Region. West African belief systems. Event. Death becomes associated with protection rather than punishment. Meaning, the afterlife is seen as refuge, not exile. Consequence. Moke's image shifts from fearsome enforcer to stabilizing force. 1500 BCE. Region. Akan regions of West Africa. Event. Offerings and moral preparation become central to burial rites. Meaning, conduct in life affects status in death. Consequence. Moke becomes associated with ethical remembrance and judgment. 1000 BCE. Region. West Africa. Event. Ancestral reverence intensifies across multiple societies. Meaning, death is fully integrated into daily spiritual life. Consequence. Moke's role becomes permanent within cultural structure. 500 BCE. Region: Akan oral culture. Event: Moke's imagery stabilizes through repeated oral transmission. Meaning: death is depicted as stern, orderly, and just. Consequence: her authority becomes unquestioned across generations. 500 BCE. Region: Mesoamerica. Event: indigenous cultures depict death through skeletal deities. Meaning: death is visible, cyclical, and familiar. Consequence: the symbolic groundwork for La Catrina is established. 400 CE. Region: Central Mexico. Event: death imagery becomes linked to ancestor remembrance rituals. Meaning: the dead are honored as continuing members of society. Consequence: death becomes culturally normalized. 1500 CE. Region: Mexico. Event: Spanish colonization introduces Catholic death iconography. Meaning: indigenous death traditions are suppressed but persist beneath the surface. Consequence: native symbolism adapts rather than disappears. 1600 CE. Region: Colonial Mexico. Event: indigenous and Catholic death imagery merge. Meaning: death becomes a hybrid cultural expression. Consequence: the skeletal female archetype begins to re-emerge. 1700 CE. Region: Mexico. Event: satirical skeletal figures critique social hierarchy. Meaning: death exposes equality in mortality. Consequence: the proto-La Catrina figure takes shape. 1800 CE. Region: Mexico. Event: elegant skeletal women are popularized in print art. Meaning: death mocks wealth, class, and vanity. Consequence: La Catrina becomes a recognizable cultural icon. 1900 CE. Region: Mexico. Event: Day of the Dead celebrations elevate La Catrina's role. Meaning: death is framed as remembrance rather than fear. Consequence: La Catrina becomes a national symbol. 2000 CE. Region: Global. Event: La Catrina gains international recognition. Meaning: Mexican death philosophy enters global culture. Consequence: death is reframed as memory and continuity. 1700 CE. Region: Haiti. Event: African spiritual traditions merge with European folklore under colonial conditions. Meaning: death guardianship adapts to displacement and enslavement. Consequence: Mémoire Brigitte emerges within the Gade spirits. 1800 CE. Region: Haiti. Event: Mémoire Brigitte becomes associated with cemeteries and graves. Meaning: she protects the dead and enforces moral order. Consequence: death becomes guarded rather than abandoned. 1900 CE. Region: Haitian Vodou tradition. Event: fire and crosses become central to Mémoire Brigitte's imagery. Meaning: death represents purification and protection. Consequence: she is feared by the unjust and trusted by the faithful. Late 1900 CE. Region: Western Media. Event: Vodou death figures are misrepresented as malevolent. Meaning: death is falsely portrayed as evil. Consequence: Mémoire Brigitte's true role is obscured. 2000 CE. Region: Haiti and diaspora communities. Event: cultural reclamation corrects misrepresentation. Meaning: death goddesses are reaffirmed as protectors. Consequence: Mémoire Brigitte is restored as a guardian figure. Present day. Region: Global Mythology Studies. Event: comparative analysis of death goddesses across cultures. Meaning: death is governed, remembered, and regulated. Consequence: Moke, La Catrina, and Mémoire Brigitte are recognized as stabilizing forces, not villains.
The descent into Mexican. The world had ended more than once, not as a metaphor, not as poetic exaggerations. Ages really had risen and fallen, whole civilizations wiped away, the very structure of reality reset. Like the games the gods keep replaying and never quite getting right. One age drowned in water, another burned in celestial fire, another collapsed under its own violence and greed, until the sky itself seemed tired of watching. Each age left something behind. Ruins sank, names vanishes, languages broke apart into sounds that no one remembered how to use. But there was one thing that did not disappear: the bones. They fell through time like stones dropping into deep water, settling in the lowest regions of existence, in places where memory did not soften, and endings did not apologize. This place was Metzlikan. Metzlikan was not fire and pitchforks. It was something colder. This was a world without sunlight, without birds, without the small accidental beauties that distract the living. There were mountains here that did not care if you climbed them, winds that cut like obsidian blades, and rivers that flowed only to separate, not to nourish. At the very bottom of those 9 layers of difficulty and forgetting, the bones of previous humanities rested, guarded by the Lord and Lady of Death, who were less monsters and more like the clerks of cosmic archives. Above, the gods argued. Some said, "Let the world sleep. The earth is quiet now, and this is good." Others said, "Build a new humanity, but this time make them obedient. No questions, no rebellions, no mistakes." Quetzalcoatl listened. He was the feathered serpent, a god of wind, learning, and ordered motion. He knew what silence meant. Silence after music can be beautiful. Silence after a scream can be relief. But this silence was not earned. It was just empty. A world without people, he said finally, is not balance. It is neglect. The other gods turned toward him. "So what would you propose?" one asked, not kindly. "If there is to be a new humanity," Quetzalcoatl answered, "it should not be made from nothing, as if nothing ever happened. It should be born from what already was, from the bones of those who lived before." Now this suggestion made some gods uncomfortable, because bones meant history. Bones meant continuity. Bones meant that actions had consequences that outlived empires. "Then go," the other said. "A test disguised as consent. If you believe this so strongly, you go down to Mexican and bring those bones back yourself." Now Quetzalcoatl did not posture. He did not summon armies or craft a speech about destiny. He simply agreed. And then he descended. Now the path to Metzlikan is not a door you open. It is a series of places where things are taken from you, until all you have left is what you really are. Quetzalcoatl's first steps took him through a region of collapsing mountains, where stone itself moved against travelers. Peaks leaned and fell without warning, forcing him to move not with brute speed, but with anticipation and timing. The god of measured wind understood timing. He breathed, watched, and moved through the shifting stone like a serpent through tall grass. And then came the winds. Not gentle breezes. Winds made of blades. They cut at him as he moved. But the god of air did not fight wind with force. He changed the currents, redirecting some, absorbing others, letting them carve away what he did not need to carry deeper. He passed through regions of darkness so thick it felt like walking through ink. Regions where the cries of the dead sounded like echoes under ice. Regions where distance lied. Step forward took you sideways instead. But he did not rush. Motion is not only speed, but it is also intention. Piece by piece, burden by burden, he came to the lowest level, to the heart of Metzlikan. There, amid plains of ash and scattered bone, stood the Lord and Lady of Death. They were not dripping with gore. They did not wave arms dramatically. They watched him with the steady patience of beings who have seen every living thing arrive eventually. "Why have you come here, Quetzalcoatl?" the Lord of Death asked. His voice did not roar. It weighed. "I have come for the bones," Quetzalcoatl said. "To decorate your temples?" the lady asked. "No." "To build an army that cannot die?" the Lord asked. "No." "Then why?" they said together. Quetzalcoatl answered without pause. "So that a new humanity can rise, not from empty command, but from memory. They will be born of what already lived and ended. They will carry that inside them, even though they do not know." The Lord and Lady of Death exchanged a look that mortals would have missed. It was not anger, it was calculations. "You may have the bones," the Lord said, "if you can take them. But nothing in Mitchland is simply given. This realm does not exist to please the living or the gods. If you want them, you will face our trials." Quetzalcoatl nodded once, then let them begin. The first was a trial of direction. The Lord of Death instructed Quetzalcoatl, "Take these bones and circle Metzlikan 4 times. Return to this place, carrying them all." Now they gave him no map. The plains ahead looked identical, fields of bone fragments and dust, low hills that shifted as if they were breathing. Quetzalcoatl gathered the bones as carefully as he could, bundling femurs, ribs, jawbones, pieces of skull that once housed thoughts and dreams. He carried them in his arms and moved forward. With each step, the land changed. What had been flat became broken. What had been open became choked with jagged stone. He walked until the landscape itself seemed offended by his persistence. A lesser being would have relied on sight. Quetzalcoatl trusted something else. He listened to the patterns of the wind. Even here in the land of the dead. He noted the way the ash moved, the way sound echoed from distant rock. He let those things guide him, subtle markers in a place designed to erase direction. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles, and on the 4th, the ground began to tilt, as if the realm itself were trying to shrug him off. Ridges rose under his feet, gaps opened suddenly. He stumbled, nearly dropping the bones. He tightened his grip and kept moving, not fast, but steady, until he came once again to the place where the Lord and the Lady waited. "You have completed the trial," they said, and they did not sound pleased, but they did not object. Now the second trial was that of sound. The Lady of Death handed him a conch shell. It was smooth, heavy, and completely sealed. "Blow this as a trumpet," she said, "so that all Mitzlikan hears your call." Quetzalcoatl turned the shell over in his hand. It had no holes, no mouth for breath to enter. A trick then, he understood. The kind that relies on reflex, that a god, insulted by impossibility, will lash out, shout back, storm away, or break the object in anger. Quetzalcoatl did none of these things. He placed the shell on the ground. He called the smallest beings of the underworld to him, and worms emerged from the soil, thin bodies slicing over stone. "Open a path," he told them. They bore into this shell, carving tunnels through its inner spirals. Then he called bees, high, bright spirits of the surface world, who still answered his wind-born summons. "Fill it with breath," he told them. They flew into the shell's new tunnels, their wings turning the hollow space into a living instrument. Quetzalcoatl lifted the conch to his lips and blew. The sound that emerged was low and vast, a tone that seemed to roll through Mitchland's bones as much as through the air. For a moment, the dead heard something that did not belong in their realm. The wave of memories, the sweep of air across open land, the echo of a world above. The Lord and Lady of Death glanced at each other again. "You have completed the second trial," they said. Their voices held no warmth. The third trial looked simple. "Carry the bones out of Mexican," the Lord said. "Take them to your living world, if you can, and we will not stop you." He said it kindly, but that was a warning. Quetzalcoatl gathered the bones again, this time aware of how fragile his mission truly was. These were not stones that he could simply replace if dropped. These were the remains of ages. He began the journey upward. The paths were no easier in reverse. The wind still cut, the mountains still moved, but now a new difficulty joined them: other hands. As he climbed, unseen forces jostled him. The ground beneath his feet shifted more violently, not like the natural tremors, but like the hand shaking a table for the pleasure of watching things fall. Birds with obsidian beaks, agents of the underworld, some say, swooped down, pecking at the bones, trying to knock them free. At a narrow ledge above the dark ravine, the assault became too much. One hand struck his arm, one slip, a misjudged step, and Quetzalcoatl stumbled. The bundle of bones spilled from his grasp, clattering across the stone, hell across the roof. Some remained close, others shattered as they hit the ground, breaking into smaller and smaller pieces, rolling into cracks, falling into the ravine below. It was not a clean drop. This was chaos, clattering loss. The sound echoed through Metzlican. The Lord and Lady of Death listened. "Look," they said, "the bones are broken. Humanity cannot be restored. Our records remain intact, but you have failed." Now, in many myths, this is where a god would rage, where the story would become a battle. Quetzalcoatl did not draw a weapon. He knelt. He moved slowly, carefully, collecting what fragments he could reach. Whole bones, half bones, pieces too small to name. His hands shook, not with fear of punishment, but with the weight of what he was trying to hold together. He could not get them all. There would be gaps, missing pieces, parts of former humans lost forever. And he knew what that meant. This humanity would not be perfect. It could not be. And still, he did not stop. When he gathered all that he could, Quetzalcoatl did something that changed more than one world. He wounded himself. He drew a sharp shard of bone across his own skin and let his blood fall into the pile. Now, divine blood, rich with memory and intent, mixed with the broken fragments of ancient lives. He did not sprinkle a ceremonial drop and step away. He bled. The bones drank the blood like dry earth drinks rain. And something moved. Not a god's command, not a clean act of creation that snaps reality from nothing. This was something slower. It was messier, and it was real. Forms began to knit together, not as copies of single perfect design, but as a collage of what was available. It was tall and short, strong and fragile, bodies that would age and tire and break. The Lord and Lady of Death watched, surprised despite themselves. "You would do this?" they asked. "Create a world of beings assembled from broken parts, held together by your own sacrifice?" "Yes," Quetzalcoatl said. "Why?" they pressed. "Because perfection does not endure," he answered. "We've all seen that. But something born from loss understands, even when it does not remember, that life is not guaranteed, and that is what makes it precious." Now, in some tellings, the Lords of Death protest. In others, they simply fall silent. But in all of them, the result is the same. Humanity is reborn again. Quetzalcoatl carried the bones, now living, now potential, back through the layers of Metzlican, through cutting winds and shifting stone, through corridors where echoes tried to convince him to turn back. He emerged into the world above, into air that did not burn his lungs, into light that did not feel like interrogation. He scattered maize over the ground and taught the humans how to coax food from the soil. He taught them how to mark time so they could remember when the rains would come and when the cold would return. He taught them how to speak, not only to ask and demand, but to pray, to recall, to sing. He did not make them worship him. He did not claim them as property. His blood was already in them, and there was no need to brand them from outside. This is why in these stories, human beings are not invincible, not flawless, and not eternally obedient. They are born from broken bones and a God's voluntary wound. We crack, we forget, we hurt each other, we love anyway. We are not the triumph of divine planning. We are the result of a God who failed the ritual of perfection, refused to accept the failure as the end, and chose to bleed rather than abandon the attempt. That is what distinguishes Quetzalcoatl from gods who only know how to rule with fear. He did not storm Mexican to seize a prize. He descended, was tested, fell, and still continued. He did not stand above humanity and issue commands. He knelt among broken bones and gave something of himself so that other people could exist. And when his work was done, he did not stay to sit on a throne over us. He became the wind that moves the unseen, the breath between worlds, the quiet force that nudges seas to sprout, and the clouds to cross a waiting sky. The descent into Mitchland is not just a story about a god going down and coming back up. It is the record of what we were made of: failure, sacrifice, memory, and the stubborn refusal to leave the world empty. Pele, goddess of fire, creation, and jealousy. Before the islands had names, before stone remembered the shape of mountains, before land dared to rise above the sea, there was only movement. The ocean whirled endlessly, dark and conscious, and within it traveled a force that refused stillness. Her name was Pele. She was not born in one place. She emerged again and again, from flame, from hunger, from the deep furnace of the world. Pele was fire with intention. Her hair flowed like smoke caught in the wind, black and endless, carrying embers in its wake. Her skin glowed as if lit from within, sometimes warm as sunlit stone, sometimes red hot with fury. Her eyes were not gentle. They burned with the knowing of something older than fear. Where Pele walked, the earth opened. She carried fire not as destruction, but as becoming. Lava spilled from her footsteps, slow and unstoppable, reshaping the world without apology. The sea hissed when she approached, retreating from her heat, recoiling from her will. But Pele was not alone in the world. Beneath the waves, where light dies and pressure rules, dwelled her sister, Namaka. Namaka was the ocean given thought. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on black water. Her hair moved as currents move, slow, heavy, inexorable. Her eyes were deep, ancient, and cold with memory as only the sea could have. Where Pele burned with emotion, Namaka endured with patience. She ruled the deep places, the trenches, the crushing silence, where nothing escapes gravity or consequence. And she resented her sister. When Pele arrived, the sea was pushed back. Where fire rose, water was displaced. Each new land Pele created was a wound in Namaka's domain. To Namaka, Pele was reckless, too loud, too hungry, too disruptive. To Pele, Namaka was suffocating, a force that drowned passion, swallowed movement, and demanded stillness. They were not enemies born of hatred. They were sisters born of opposition. Fire that must move, water that must contain. When Pele first settled, she believed she could build a home. She dug into the earth, carving chambers for her flame, shaping mountains from molten stone. She believed the land would hold her, but Namaka would not allow it. With crashing waves and rising tides, Namaka answered. She flooded Pele's home, cooled her lava, shattered her growing islands, and dragged them back into the sea. Storms followed Pele wherever she lingered too long. Island after island, Pele was driven away. Each retreat hardened her. Each loss sharpened her jealousy, not of her sister's power, but of her sister's stability. Namaka already had a kingdom. The ocean accepted her without resistance. Pele had to fight for every inch of ground. And still, she moved forward. She crossed the sea again and again, chased by waves, hunted by storms, carrying her fire across the dark. What humans would later call volcanoes are the scars of this journey, places where Pele tried to stay and was forced to flee. And then at last, she reached Hawaii, the youngest island, the strongest spine of the stone. Here, the earth did not break beneath her. It answered. Pele dug deep, deeper than she ever had before. She struck the mantle of the world itself, tapping into the planet's heart. Fire surged upward and stayed. Namaka became, again, furious. Waves slammed against the stone, storms tore at the land, but this time the land endured. Fire and water clashed, not to destroy each other, but to define their boundaries. And Pele remained. She claimed the volcano as her body and the island as her spine. She did not rule from the sea or the sky, she ruled from beneath. The people felt her presence in trembling ground, in glowing rivers of lava, in the fertile soil that followed destruction. Pele was not cruel, but she was emotional. She loved fiercely. And when she loved, she gave warmth, growth, and abundance. Forests returned when the lava had cooled. Life sprang that appeared to be dead. The people learned to honor her, to respect her fire, to speak her name with care. Because Pele was also jealous. When she was disrespected, when love was betrayed, when humans forgot the land was alive, her anger rose. Lava flowed without mercy, villages vanished beneath molten stone. It was not punishment, it was correction. Pele did not destroy out of hatred. She destroyed because stagnation is a lie. Fire clears what no longer serves, and creation requires sacrifice. Namaka watched from the deep, no longer chasing her sister, but never forgiving her. The ocean still presses against the land, testing it, reminding Pele that nothing remains unchallenged forever. They are still bound. Fire rises, water answers. The world is shaped between them. Even now, Pele sleeps beneath the islands. Not gone, not silent, but waiting. Because fire never truly rests. The myth of Thanatos and Sisyphus, when death becomes delayed but never denied. Now Thanatos was known as the god who comes softly. In Greek mythology, he is the god of death, not the ruler of the underworld, not the judge of the souls, but he is the moment that life releases its hold. Born of Nyx, the goddess of the night, Thanatos moves without shadow or spectacle. He has no hunger, no malice, no pleasure in his task. Where others rage or bargain, he simply arrives. And thus the Greeks have given him the name, the Gentle One. When Thanatos comes, breath slows, pain loses its grip, the body understands before the mind does that the time has come to stop resisting. He does not rush, he does not linger. He closes the distance between life and what follows as quietly as sleep. He moves without sound, without warning, and he does not miss. Enter a king who sees the end coming. Sisyphus, king of Corinth, is not a great warrior or a favorite son of the gods, but he survives by cleverness sharpened into instinct. He listens too closely. He notices patterns others dismiss. He is a man who lives by staying one step ahead of consequence. And at this time, consequence speaks very clearly. An oracle tells him the truth without poetry. His time is near. His thread has been measured, and death is already on its way. And Sisyphus believes this because he has learned that the gods rarely lie. They simply allow you time enough to decide how badly you want to resist. The deathbed. Soon Sisyphus falls ill. His strength leaves him gradually, not violently. He takes to his bed and waits, surrounded by the quiet room that already feels less real. His breath grows shallow, his hands tremble. He knows the sign, and he knows who will come. And so Sisyphus, as always, is prepared. He ordered chains brought to him, fine ones, expertly forged, riddled with magical energy. He studied them as his body studies weakness, rehearsing the moment that he would activate these very special chains. This was not going to be a fight with death, but it was going to be a delay, because Sisyphus had decided that when Thanatos arrives, that he will not go quietly, and thus he is ready. The arrival. Thanatos comes as he always does, not with the sound, not with force, but with a change in the air. The room grows still, not abruptly, but as if the world itself was deciding to stop fidgeting. Shadows soften along the walls. The light dims without fading, settling into quiet, even glow. Harsh edges lose definition. Nothing flickers, nothing strains. Breath slows. The air cools just enough to be noticed. Not cold, not warm, but balanced. Pain loosens its grip. The body, even before the mind understands it, begins to rest. Thanatos does not announce himself. He does not open doors or cross thresholds in the ways that others do. One moment, the space is occupied only by the living. The next, it is shared with a divine creature. He stands at the bedside, unarmed, unhurried, but always certain. His presence does not demand surrender. It invites it. Time feels different near him, not stopped, but resolved. The future loses its urgency. The past releases its weight. There is only this moment, held gently, waiting for resistance to simply fade. This is how death arrives when it is not violent. It is quiet, complete, inevitable. And Sisyphus, watching from his bed, feels the world settle into stillness and smiles. The capture of Thanatos. For a long moment, nothing happens. Thanatos stands at the bed, as he always does, waiting for the final loosening, the breath that does not return, that will no longer cling to things. He never needed to hurry. Mortals always reach the same end on their own. And Sisyphus watches him carefully, but not with fear, with close attention. His body is weak, his breath is shallow, but his mind is awake, moving quietly beneath the stillness of the room. He feels the calm pressing in, the invitation to let go, and it would be easy to accept, easier than anything he has ever done. And yet, Sisyphus speaks. Not loudly, not urgently. His voice barely disturbs the air. "You come gently," he said. "I did not expect that." Thanatos does not answer at all at first. He doesn't need to. But neither does he stop Sisyphus from speaking. Words, after all, cannot delay death. "They say you bind the living," Sisyphus continues, gesturing weakly towards the chains laying carefully beside the bed. "That when your work is finished, no one resists you." Thanatos turns his gaze, not sharply, not suspiciously, but with mild attention one gives to curiosity. "These," Sisyphus says softly, lifting the chains with trembling hands, "are well made, strong and precise. I would understand your work better if I could see how they were used." Thanatos hesitates, not because he is wary, but because he has never been asked. He steps closer, reaches out, and demonstrates patiently, gently, without urgency. These chains close, smooth and certain, just as they have countless times before. Only this time, they close on him. The room does not explode in chaos. There is no thunder, no scream, no resistance. Thanatos looks down at the chains, then back to Sisyphus, and for the first time, death does not move forward. For the first time, the moment does not complete itself. Sisyphus exhales, a breath he should not have taken. Death has been delayed. The world without an ending. The stillness does not leave the room, but still it spreads. Across the world, something falters. Blades strike flesh and do not finish their work. The wounded linger, unable to cross the threshold. The old remains suspended in pain, waiting for a release that does not come. Battles rage endlessly. Suffering stretches without resolution. Life without death does not become precious. It can become unbearable. And Thanos stands bound, silent, neither struggling nor pleading. He does not rage. Rage would change nothing. He waits, because waiting is also part of his nature. And then the gods begin to notice. Ares frees Thanatos. The world begins to rot from the inside. Wounds do not close, and they do not end. Blood spills without release. Warriors fall and rise again, screaming, locked inside bodies that refuse to finish dying. Battlefields stretch on endlessly, victories never concluding, losses never settling. War becomes noise without resolution. And the god Ares sees it all, because this is his domain, not death, but ending through violence. And without death, even war is meaningless. And Ares descends to earth, not with patience, but with force. Where he arrives, the air tears, the ground shakes. Order does not soften, it breaks. He does not announce himself. He does not ask questions. He goes where the imbalance points him, and he finds Thanatos bound. The god of death stands silent in chains, unchained, uncomplaining. He has waited because waiting is what he does. Ares does not speak to Sisyphus. He does not scold. He does not threaten. He simply shatters the chains. Metal screams as it breaks. The stillness collapses. The air rushes back into motion as if it were released from a held breath. And Thanatos steps free. The room itself exhales, and without a word, death resumes. Across the world, screams cut out. Wounds close by finishing. The old finally find rest. Battles end, not because peace has arrived, but because conclusion has. Thanatos does not thank Ares. He does not linger, he simply continues. And in that moment, Sisyphus is taken. The second defiance. Sisyphus is taken, but not humbled. Even as Thanatos leads him away, his mind is already moving, measuring, listening, searching for the next seam in the order of things. He has already delayed death once. He has tasted the power of interruption, and he believes that he can do it again. Before his final breath leaves him, Sisyphus gives his wife careful instructions. No rites, no burial, no offerings to the gods. His body is to be left unhonored, unmarked, and incomplete. It is a small act of defiance, almost invisible, but Sisyphus understands the system well enough to know that the system is dependent on completion. A complaint in the underworld. In the realm below, Sisyphus does not scream or rage. He simply complains. He approaches Persephone, queen of the dead, not as a rebel, but as a wronged man. His voice is measured, his posture is respectful. I have been abandoned, he says, denied the rights that seal a life properly. I have been sent here dishonored. And Persephone listens, not because she is easily moved, but because the complaint is valid. The dead are owed their rights. Others depend on it. She grants him permission to return, to correct the failure, to ensure that what must be done is properly done. She gives him a temporary mercy. Sisyphus returns to the living world. And then he does not go back. He resumes his life as if nothing has changed. He walks under the sun, he eats, he laughs, he delays, stretching time thin, pretending ignorance. Days pass, and then years, and the gods watch. This is no longer cleverness, this is flat out contempt. When Sisyphus is finally taken. It does not happen suddenly. There is no thunder, no gods descending in fury, no hands reaching from the shadows. One morning, Sisyphus wakes and feels something different. The air is heavier, not hostile, just final. The sun rises but does not warm him. Food has lost its taste. Voices reach his ears a moment too late, as if the world has begun to move on without him. For the first time since his return, Sisyphus feels behind. He walks the halls of his palace and notices how small they feel, how familiar, how finished. He looks at the faces around him and realizes that none of them are looking back in the same way. Time has been moving, and he has not. And then he understands, not with fear, with clarity. There are no tricks left. Thanatos comes again, not bound, not delayed. He arrives as always, gently, precisely, without urgency. The room settles, the edges soften, and breath slows. And this time, Sisyphus does not smile. Thanatos does not accuse him. He does not remind him of past defiance. He simply stands, patient as ever, waiting for the moment to complete itself. Sisyphus looks at him and knows, finally, that this visitation is not a negotiation. He has already spent every allowance. The walk back. There is no struggle. Sisyphus rises where he stands and follows, not because he has accepted death, but because resistance has lost its shape. The clever paths have closed. The seams he once pried open are gone. As they move, the world begins to thin. Sounds dull. Colors flatten. Distances shorten. The living realm does not mourn him loudly. It simply releases him. And for the first time, Sisyphus feels something unfamiliar. Before the judgment. When he is brought before the gods, they do not shout. There is no anger in their voices, no need for it. What Sisyphus has done is already complete. That record is closed. They look at him not as an enemy, not as a hero, but as a man who mistook delay for victory, and they decide his fate without cruelty, without passion, and without precision. The stone. The stone waits at the base of the hill. It is larger than Sisyphus suspected, but not impossibly so, but undeniably real. Its surface is rough, unyielding, cold even in the dim light of the underworld. It does not glow, it does not hum with magic. It offers no hint of meaning. Just wait. The hill rises before him, long and bare. Its slope neither cruel nor forgiving. There is no summit in sight, only the knowledge that one exists. Sisyphus stands there for a moment longer than needed. He studies the incline, he measures the angle. Old habits surface. Somewhere in his mind, calculations begin to form. Pace, leverage, breath. He's still looking for the how. And then he places his hands against the stone. The first push is awkward. His footing slips slightly. The stone resists. Not violently, but stubbornly, as if it had never known movement and sees no reason to learn it. His muscles strain. Breath tightens in his chest. Slowly, the stone begins to roll. For the first time since his final descent, Sisyphus feels effort again. Not pain, not punishment, but effort. The stone moves upward, inch by inch. The sound it makes against the ground is dull and constant, a low scrape which fills the silence. There is no audience, no gods watch, no voice offers commentary. It is just him, the stone, and the hill. And for a moment, a dangerous moment, hope stirs. Progress is made. He adjusts his grip. He finds a rhythm. His steps become more confident. The slope steepens, but he adapts. This is work, and work he understands. Work that rewards persistence. Perhaps he thinks this is not endless. Perhaps There is an end after all. Then the summit comes into view, and with it, the truth. As the stone reaches the crest, its weight shifts. Not dramatically, not violently, just enough. His hands lose purchase, his footing falters, the stone pauses, and then it rolls back. Not fast, not angry, but it returns with certainty. Sisyphus watches it descend, feeling the effort drain out of his body as sound fades down the hill. The ground trembles faintly when he reaches the bottom, settling into place, exactly where it began. Silence returns. Sisyphus does not cry out. He does not curse the gods. He stands at the top of the hill, breathing hard, staring at the empty slope before him. This is when he understands, not that the task is difficult, but that it is perfectly designed. Every push feels like progress. Every failure will erase nothing but effort. Every ascent will teach him that movement is not the same as arrival. The punishment is not the stone, it is the repetition. And after the long moment, Sisyphus returns. He walks back down the hill. He places his hands on the stone again and again, as will be his fate. Epilogue. The hill remains, the stone remains. Time passes, though it no longer matters. Sisyphus pushes, the stone rolls back. The pattern continues unbroken. Above him, the world of living moves on without any notice. Seasons change, cities rise and fall, names are spoken once, then forgotten. None of it reaches the slope where he works, and yet there's no screaming here, no punishment renewed with each ascent, no voice counting failures, only motion, only breath, only the quiet weight of effort repeated until it loses urgencies. Thanatos does not return to watch. The gods do not observe. They have finished. Sisyphus pushes because the hill is there. He pushes because the stone waits. He pushes because pushing is all that remains. And something between the beginning and the end of the climb, the mind grows quiet. The thought loosens. Resistance fades in a rhythm. Not peace, but stillness. The stone rolls, the hill endures, and the story, like this task, does not end. It simply continues. The Shape of Death, a myth reading. Before death had a name, it had no face. There was no figure waiting in the dark, no voice calling from beyond, no blade raised in judgment. There was only absence. The earliest humans did not imagine death as an enemy. They experienced it as an event, as a sudden cold, as inevitable as night. A body stopped moving. A fire went out. A voice was never heard again. Death did not arrive, it happened. And because it had no intention, it inspired no image. As civilizations formed, something changed. When humans learned to build cities, they also learned to remember. And memory demanded explanation. If life had meaning, then its ending had to as well. So death became a place before it became a person, a realm, a crossing, a river, a shadowed road. In many early traditions, death was gentle, not merciful, but calm. It came like sleep. It came like dusk. The dead were not punished. They were processed, guided, measured, prepared. Death was not here to hurt you. It was there to receive you. But the world grew crowded. Empires expanded, wars multiplied, famine followed power wherever it went. And death stopped feeling distant. It moved into homes, into streets, into churches. When people began dying by the thousands, death could no longer be abstract. It needed a face. The turning point came when death became visible, not as a myth, but a spectacle. Plague emptied cities. fields filled with bodies instead of crops. Entire generations vanished between seasons. And suddenly, death was no longer rare. It was constant. When something becomes constant, humans stop asking if and start asking when. And when fear demands explanation, authority provides answers. This is when death learned to judge. The end of life was no longer neutral. It was deserved. It was earned. Avoided if you obeyed. The dead were no longer simply gone. They were sorted, saved or condemned, accepted or judged. And judgment requires a judge. So humanity dressed death, not in flesh, but in symbol, a skeleton, because beneath every difference, all humans look the same. A robe, because authority hides itself, because power never shows its hand. And a blade, not a sword of war, but a tool of harvest, the scythe. Because death does not fight you, it collects you. The Grim Reaper did not appear all at once. It assembled, piece by piece, century by century. Artists painted what people feared. Priests preached what people needed to hear. And death stepped forward, not as an idea, but as a presence. Tall, silent, watching. It did not rage, it did not plead, it waited. And this figure was not born from ancient scripture. It was born from trauma, from watching neighbors vanish overnight, from mass graveyards blessed in a hurry, from doorbells ringing so often they lost meaning. The Grim Reaper is not death itself. It is humanity's attempt to look death in the eye. And once death had a face, it could be spoken to, appealed to, mocked, or feared. Stories emerged of death being tricked, outrun, delayed. Not because humans believed they could win, but because they needed to imagine resistance. Even in myth, death always wins, but sometimes it listens. As centuries passed, the Grim Reaper followed humanity forward, into books, into theater, into art, then into films, then into comics, then into jokes. Because when something terrifies you long enough, eventually you laugh. Not because it is funny, but because laughter is control. Thoth, god of cosmic structure, language, and recorded reality. Thoth is not a god who rules through force. He does not conquer, he does not command armies, he does not demand worship through fear. Thoth governs something far more dangerous. He governs understanding. In Kemetic thought, the universe does not function because it's powerful. It functions because it is ordered, because it can be measured, because it can be named, because it can be remembered. And Thoth is the intelligence that makes that possible. Now, Thoth is known by many names, each reflecting a different aspect of his function. In Kemet, he is Jehudi, a name tied to intelligence, speech, and precision. He is called Lord of Divine Words, he who reckons time, and scribe of the gods. To the Greeks, he becomes Hermes, and later Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great mind. In esoteric traditions, he is not treated as a personality at all, but as a principle of intelligence. Sometimes he appears with the head of an ibis bird, sometimes as a baboon. These are not aesthetic choices. The ibis represents calculation, balance, and precision. The baboon represents observation, memory, and lunar rhythm. Thoth's forms are not symbolic masks, they are functional avatars. Now, this is what Thoth actually governs. Thoth does not create the universe. He does not destroy it. He does not rule it. He makes it legible. Thoth governs language as a creative force, writing as memory made permanent, mathematics as cosmic truth, time as a measurable system, law as recorded balance. In Kemetic cosmology, chaos is not defeated by violence, it is stabilized by Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance. And Thoth is Ma'at's recorder. He does not decide what is true, He ensures that truth is accurately accounted for, and that distinction matters. Thoth and the structure of reality. In myth, Thoth is often present during moments of dispute among gods. When Horus and Set battle for kingship, Thoth mediates. When divine law must be clarified, Thoth records. When order must be restored, Thoth calculates. He is not neutral because he is indifferent. He is neutral because structure must be impartial. Reality does not care who you are, only whether balance is maintained. Thoth embodies that principle. Now, the weighing of the heart ceremony. One of Thoth's most important roles appears in the judgment of the dead. When a soul enters the hall of Ma'at, the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. Anubis conducts the ritual. Osiris presides, but Thoth records the outcome. He does not judge the soul. He does not punish it. He does not save it. He ensures the process is correct. In this moment, Thoth represents the idea that justice is not emotional, it is procedural. Cosmic awareness is not mercy or cruelty, it is accuracy. Language is power. Now, to understand Thoth, we must understand how ancient cultures viewed language. Words were not labels, they were forces. To know the true name of a thing was to have power over it. To write something was to make it real beyond the moment. Thoth is the god of that threshold. Speech becomes spell. Writing becomes law. Memory becomes continuity. This is why Thoth is associated with magic, not illusion, but as applied knowledge. Magic is simply understanding reality well enough to manipulate it. And his influence beyond Kemet. Thoth does not remain confined to Kemet. Through cultural contact, he becomes Hermes. Through Hermeticism, he becomes the universal mind. Through alchemy, he becomes the architect of transformation. Through philosophy, he becomes intellect itself. By the time he appears as Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth is no longer just a god. He is the idea that consciousness can understand the universe it inhabits, and that idea survives every empire. The Book of Thoth. Now, Thoth's most famous relic is not a weapon or a crown. It is fittingly a book. And the Book of Thoth represents total knowledge, language that can command nature, words that can bend reality. Myth warns that those who read it without wisdom lose themselves, not because knowledge is evil, but because unprepared awareness destabilizes identity. This is a recurring pattern in Thoth mythology. Knowledge is dangerous, but power without structure destroys the holder. This is why Thoth is not a king. Thoth never rules a kingdom. This is not an omission, it is a statement. Kings come and go. Structures remain. Thoth does not sit on a throne because reality itself sits on his function. Empires collapse, languages die, but mathematics persist. Law persists. Memory persists. And thus, so does Thoth. In modern thinking, Thoth appears as the architect of intellect, the symbol of recorded reality, the reminder that understanding carries responsibility. He is not faith. He is not belief. He is the mechanism between both. Thoth does not ask to be worshipped. He asks only to be understood. He stands where knowledge becomes permanent, where speech shapes reality, where truth is measured instead of declared. As long as humans seek to understand the universe rather than to dominate it, Thoth remains present, not as a ruler, but as the mind that keeps the universe legible. Tiamat, the first mother of monsters. Before there were gods with names, before temples, before prayers, before fear knew how to kneel, there was Tiamat. Not born, not created, not crowned. She was. She was the saltwater ocean before shorelines existed, the dark womb before light learned how to speak, the roar beneath creation, where nothing had yet decided what it wanted to be. Tiamat was not evil. She was not kind. She was unfiltered existence. In the beginning, there was only mingling. Fresh water and salt. Apsu and Tiamat. Stillness and motion folding into one another. From this union came the younger gods, loud, restless, impatient. They shouted inside the silence. They stirred the waters. They forgot that they were guests inside a body older than time. And the old gods began to ache. Apsu wanted silence back. He planned destruction not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. The young gods killed him first. They struck the quiet father down, and the waters trembled. Tiamat felt it, not as grief alone, but as betrayal. Creation had turned on its source. Something ancient woke up in her depths. Not rage, not vengeance. Correction. The sea does not scream when it floods a city. It simply returns things to where they belong. Tiamat did not declare war. She responded. She gave birth again. This time, not to gods who would forget her. This time she birthed monsters. Serpents with venom instead of prayers. Dragons with eyes like eclipses. Creatures shaped by fear itself. Not because she loved chaos, but because chaos was truth before order learned how to lie. A consort forged for war, and the heavens shook. The younger gods panicked. They had learned how to rule, but not how to face their mother. They searched for a weapon. They searched for a hero. They chose Marduk. Not because he was the oldest, not because he was the wisest, but because he promised control. Marduk did not face Tiamat as a son. He faced her as a system. He brought nets to trap the infinite winds, to suffocate the ocean. Words to define what should never have been named. And when he struck her down, creation didn't cheer, it split. From her body, the world was built. Her ribs became the sky. Her blood became the rivers. Her bones became the foundation of order. Civilization rose on a corpse, and all the gods called it victory. But listen closely. Chaos was never destroyed. It was never dissected. Tiamat did not vanish. She was repurposed. Every storm that ignores your prayers, every flood that erases borders, every moment where systems collapse under their own arrogance, that is her breath moving through the cracks. Tiamat is not a villain. She is the reminder that order is temporary, that control is borrowed, that creation always comes from something older, darker, and deeper than comfort allows. She is the mother civilization buried alive, and she is still dreaming. The gods fear chaos because it reminds them of what they were before they learned how to rule, that they were simply aspects of the universe, no greater or lesser than any other creation. The Vega Chorus, the hidden civilization of the Fae. There is a system in the northern sky that most humans mistake for simply a star. Vega. Bright, steady, harmless. But Vega is not a star alone. Vega is a civilization. And not the kind that builds empires. The kind that builds coherence. Long before the Aesir divided dominion, long before angels learned hierarchy, long before humans named gods prayed upward, Vega was already synchronized. The Fae are not tribes. They are not rival courts. They are not scattered fantasy creatures fluttering in forests. They are one civilization, a distributed mind wearing different bodies. individual excellence inside collective intelligence. They do not rule each other, they resonate. At the heart of Vega is something no empire understands: the chorus. Not a monarch, not a throne, not a god. The chorus is a shared cognitive field, a living psychic lattice. It stores memory, intent, invention, cultural law. Every Fae can access it, but not equally. To speak with one Fae is not to speak with an individual. You are speaking with a civilization through a particular mouthpiece. Privacy exists, secrecy exists, but deception barely does. When a Fae lies, the chorus vibrates. When a Fae fractures the whole, the field trembles. Dissent does not cause war, it causes desynchronization. And desynchronization is treated like a disease, not punished, healed, because coherence is survival. That is why Vega has never collapsed. It cannot fracture in the way empires fracture. It does not vote, it resonates. And from that resonance arise four great expressions of consciousness. Not species, expressions. The first are the elves, the aesthetic cortex of Vega. They decide how reality should feel. They shape ecosystems like musicians tune instruments. They sculpt genetics like artists shape marble. They control light, symmetry, emotional resonance. For them, beauty is not vanity, beauty is organization. A forest that is balanced is beautiful. A form that is efficient is beautiful. Ugliness is inefficiency. Inefficiency is danger. The elves design worlds that do not decay prematurely. They decide the elegance of probability. They do not ask whether something is pleasing, they ask whether it harmonizes. And if it does not harmonize, they redesign it. Where the elves determine how realities look, the dwarves determine what reality can survive. And this is structural cortex. Reality engineers. Star metal forgers. They understand the weight of physics the way others understand breath. Jewels in Vega are not decoration, they are memory. Crystal lattices store data, compression through structure. A dwarven city does not collapse because collapse is not permitted. They bend law without breaking it. They bind vaults that hold time steady. They forge metals that remember who touched them. They calculate load, tension, strain, not with numbers alone, but with harmonic awareness. If the elves are beauty, the dwarves are endurance. And then there are the gnomes, the cognitive cortex, the dangerous ones among them. Where others see doors, gnomes see coordinates. They were the first to understand that realms are not mystical mysteries. They are addressable locations. Portals are not open, they are called. A gnome does not ask, where do we go? They ask, what frequency are we dialing? Their portals operate on symbol, on intent, on harmonic mathematics, on narrative destiny. Every realm vibrates at a signature. Every world carries a pattern. To dial incorrectly is to not fail. It is to arrive somewhere you cannot survive. Humans imagine glowing arcs, spinning circles, ritual incantations. The gnomes use indexing systems, dimensional mathematics, resonant coordinates. They do not tear space, they pursue it. And that is why Vega is feared, not because it conquers, but because it understands access. No empire can dominate a civilization that cannot be divided. The Aesir built hierarchy, the Vega build coherence. Hierarchies require obedience, coherence requires alignment. You cannot bribe resonance, you cannot threaten harmony, you cannot infiltrate a mind that is already shared. That is why Vega has never needed armies. When an external force approaches, the chorus adjusts. Light shifts, probabilities bend, portals close. Not all by decree, but by synchronization. And yet, Vega is not perfect. Individual excellence still exists. The chorus amplifies brilliance, but it also magnifies deviation. When a Fae drifts too far away from harmonic law, the field hums. Correction begins. Not through exile, through recalibration. That is the subtle terror outsiders feel. That you are not confronting a ruler, You are confronting a civilization that cannot lie to itself. And now, the human problem. Humans are loud, emotionally erratic, narratively dense. We fracture easily, we divide quickly, we deceive others daily, and yet we are curious. When humans discover portal mathematics, when they uncover harmonic fragments, when they initiate symbols without understanding densities, they attempt to dial blindly. What frequency are we disturbing? And that is how civilizations collide, not through invasion, through curiosity without coherence. Vega does not seek Earth. It does not seek conquest. But if a door is dialed, if frequencies align, if narrative density breaches threshold, the chorus will answer. Not with war, but with evaluation. If Earth is dissonant, if humanity cannot harmonize, Vega will not destroy, it will simply refuse resonance. And a world without resonance collapses under its own fragmentation. Remember this, they are not fantasies, they are structure. They are synchronization. They are a civilization that does not fracture. And in the cosmos ruled by hierarchy and conquest, that may be the most dangerous power of all. When you look at the Vega in the night sky, you are not looking at a star. You are looking at coherence, listening, waiting for someone to dial correctly. Wadjet, the flame on the brow of kings. Before crowns were forged, before thrones were carved from stone, before kings learned how to speak like gods, power already had a guardian. In the marshlands of the Delta, where water hides its depth and reed whispers secrets older than language, Wadjet watched. She did not rule a city. She did not demand temples. She did not walk among the people. She waited. The gods knew chaos does not always arrive as war. Sometimes it comes as doubt. Sometimes as betrayal. Sometimes as a ruler who forgets why he was chosen. And when the world needed authority that could not be questioned, they did not send a storm. They did not send an army. They sent a warning. From the papyrus marsh, the cobra rose, not to strike, but to be seen. Wadjet coiled herself into fire and gold, her body becoming the living sigil of sovereignty. She climbed the crown of the king, not as decoration, but as a contract. Rule in balance, she whispered, without sound or burn. From that day forward, no true king stood alone. When enemies crept through shadows, Wadjet's eyes opened. When traitors smiled too easily, her hood flared. When foreign kings tested the borders of Kemet, they felt heat on their faces before steel ever touched their skin. She did not chase invaders across deserts. She did not roar like Sekhmet. She did not judge like Anubis. She simply ended threats. Quickly, precisely, without ceremony. Pharaohs learned this truth early. The crown was not theirs. The throne was not theirs. Even the land was borrowed. What belonged to them was the responsibility of being worthy of the cobra. For when a ruler spoke falsely, Wadjet tightened. When the ruler ruled for himself, she leaned forward. And when a ruler forgot Ma'at entirely, forgot balance, forgot duty, forgot the people, the flame on the brow burned hot enough to be the last thing his enemies never saw. Thus Wadjet endured, not in stories told to children, but in silent warnings to kings, not as a goddess who walked the earth, but as a presence that ended reigns. Even now, long after crowns have turned dust, her symbol remains, a reminder. Power is never safe, authority is never passive, and true sovereignty always comes with a blade already drawn. Wadjet still watches, and she never misses. Melina, the Inuit sun goddess who refused to be caught. Now, the Arctic is not empty. It only looks empty to people who've never had to survive in a world where the sky can erase you. Up here, silence is language, wind is warning, and light is not decoration. Light is a verdict. Because in the far north, the sun doesn't simply rise, it returns, like something that had left on purpose, like someone who remembers why they ran. And her name, whispered through the ice, through stories, through generations, is Malina, the Inuit sun goddess, North America's burning eye. So picture this, a tundra horizon so wide it feels like the edge of the world. Snow drifts like plain dunes, dark rock teeth jut from the land, and above it all, a sky that doesn't behave like other skies. A sky where the sun can refuse to set, or disappear for weeks. A sky that makes time feel like an animal, restless, hungry, unpredictable. In that world, you don't worship the sun because it's pretty, you respect it because it decides if you live. And Malina is that decision. Malina, the woman who became daylight. Malina isn't portrayed as a distant glowing ball. She is a woman, a being with presence, with hair like night wind, with skin kissed by cold and sun alike, with eyes that carry the weight of the horizon. She wears the Arctic the way royalty wears a crown, not for fashion, but for survival. And around her, whether you imagine her in traditional adornments or in mythic cinematic armor made of hide, bone, and sunlight, there is always the same feeling. She is not gentle. She is not the soft warmth of spring morning. She is the harsh truth of daylight, the kind that exposes tracks in snow, the kind that reveals what someone tried to hide, the kind that turns secrets in the shadows that have nowhere to go. The beginning. Before the sky, there was a house. In one of the most famous Inuit tellings, Malina begins not in the heavens, but on earth. She lived with her brother. His name was Ananigan, often described as the moon. And in some versions, another sister exists too, a presence in the household, another point on the triangle of family and fate. But the core is always the same. Malina is there. Ananga is there. A home exists. And like many mythic homes, it is not safe because it has walls. Sometimes the first danger in a mythology is not the monster outside, it is the betrayal inside. The violation when trust breaks. There is a night, and the night is thick. No stars you can count, no lamp strong enough to banish what's about to happen. Malina's brother violates her, and in some telling, she comes into her darkness and does not know who until the truth is uncovered. And when the truth becomes clear, when the betrayal reveals its face, something fundamental snaps. Not just in Malina, in the world. Because in the Inuit myth, the cosmos isn't mechanical, it's emotional, a moral universe, a relationship universe. And when an act like that happens, the world does not shrug and move on. It transforms. The torch. Flight becomes fire. Malina does not stay. She takes a torch, a fire in hand, and she runs. Not into the woods, not into another village. She runs into the sky. And as she rises, her torch becomes brighter, hotter, purer, until it is no longer just a fire. It is the sun itself. And it is the first blazing refusal, the first celestial no. And behind her, Ananigan follows. He is frantic, hungry, ashamed, possessed by pursuit. He grabs his own flame, and his light becomes the moon, not as radiant, not as triumphant, a lesser fire, a chasing fire. The chase. Why the sun and the moon move. Now the sky makes sense. Not because science is wrong, but because the myth is describing something else. Not the physics of motion, but the meaning of motion. The sun and the moon cross the heavens, not as random objects, but as story. Malina runs ahead, unreachable, sovereign, burning. Anangan follows, always behind, never arriving. And in many tales, the moon grows thin, weak, diminished, because he forgets to eat, because obsession is a kind of starvation. That is why the moon waxes and wanes. Sometimes he regains strength, sometimes he fades, but he never stops chasing. And Melina never stops moving, because the first rule of her myth is she will not be caught again. The Arctic miracle, when day doesn't end. And here's where the Inuit sky becomes legend, because in the far north, the sun can hang above the horizon for days, weeks, months, a long golden endurance, a daylight that refuses to die. This is not a cute fun fact, this is Melina's personality written across the atmosphere. When Melina decides to stay, she stays. When she leaves completely. And then she returns. You feel it in your bone, because for the communities living in the Arctic, the returning sun is not just nice weather. It is spiritual event. It is cosmic reunion, a promise that the world hasn't abandoned you. Melina's power, light as witness. But here's the thing most people miss about Melina. Her power isn't just heat, it's exposure. Light reveals, light tracks movement, light turns footprints into evidence. Light makes the hunter visible, light makes the hunted see the land. Melina becomes the witness of the sky. And here's the harsh truth to that. Because of her story, the sun isn't a smiling mother. It's a survivor, a living boundary, a force that says, I will not disappear for your comfort. I will not soften the truth. I will shine until you can't pretend anymore. The cosmic archetype, the solar feminine who escapes. A lot of cultures imagine the sun as male, a king, a warrior, a father, a creator seated on a throne of fire. But Melina is a different archetype. She is the solar feminine as escape and sovereignty. She is the feminine divinity not defined by who she belongs to, but who she refuses. She is a goddess who doesn't negotiate with violation. She doesn't argue, she doesn't plead, she moves. And in moving, she becomes untouchable. In moving, she becomes the sky's dominant rhythm. Now, imagine Melina as she would appear in the cinematic myth. She walks across a bridge of snow and ice. Behind her, the sun blooms like a halo, too bright to stare at. Wind pulls her hair like black smoke. Her silhouette is sharp against the gold. She doesn't smile as a friendly deity, but she moves forward, always forward. Each step is a reminder that this is a goddess not begging for worship. This is a goddess whose existence is proof of survival. So when the sun stretches over the Arctic, when it refuses to set, when it stares down at the frozen land like an unblinking eye, remember this: it is not just daytime, it is Melina, still running, still sovereign, still refusing to be caught. And in the world where people have tried to rewrite what happened, erase what happened, hide what happened, Melina becomes something sacred, a light that will not let the story disappear, because her myth teaches a hard truth carved in the sky. Sometimes the only way to survive is to become untouchable. Sometimes the only way forward is to turn your escape into a new cosmos. And the sun is not always kindness. Sometimes the sun is a woman with a torch and a vow. Echidna, the cosmic mother of monsters. Now, Echidna is not called herself a monster, but she is the mother of them. Her name in Greek means viper, Echidna, and this word carries venom. It is ancient, coiled, and is patient. She does not belong to the generation of Olympian gods. She does not sit in marble halls. She does not command lightning or law. She belongs to something much older. Now, most traditions name her as the daughter of Phorcyrus and Ceto, ancient sea deities, beings well formed in the earliest layers of mythic existence. And other traditions go deeper still. They claim she was born of Gaia, the earth itself, and Tartarus, the abyss beneath the foundations. And if that lineage is accepted, then Echidna is not simply born into the world, she emerges from its structure. She is earth and depth combined. She is soil and void. She is surface and underworld. And her form reflects that duality. From the waist up, she is woman, beautiful, aware, composed. From the waist down, she is serpent, scaled, coiled, eternal. And this is not a curse, it is a declaration. The upper form represents consciousness, the lower form represents instinct. The serpent is older than temples, older than kings, older than writing itself. And across cultures, the serpent represents regeneration, tonic power, and the pulse of life that moves beneath the visible world. Echidna is not stitched together from parts, she is a whole. She is the seam between civilization and wilderness. She dwells in a cave, far from cities, far from Olympus. Ancient sources place her in the wild regions of Scylla. She does not seek attention, she does not seek conquest. She inhabits the margins, and from the margins she births power. Her giant, the great storm giant who once rose against Zeus. Typhon embodies violent chaos, wind, fire, upheaval. Echidna embodies generative chaos. Together they form a bloodline that predates order and survives beyond it. They do not seek to rule Olympus. They produce what challenges it. This is where Echidna reveals her true cosmic role. She is called the mother of monsters, but that phrase is much smaller than her actual being. She birthed Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the underworld gates. She births the Hydra, the regenerative serpent that multiplies when wounded. She birthed the Chimera, the fusion of lion, goat, and serpent, a living contradiction of categories. She birthed Ortherus, the twin-headed guardian beast. In some traditions, she births the Sphinx, the riddle keeper who tests gods. These are not mindless horrors. They are thresholds. They stand at borders. They guard gateways. They demand transformation. Each one of her children forces confrontation. Each one requires growth. Each one stands between humanity and its next stage. Echidna does not birth destruction without design. She births resistance. Without resistance, there is no evolution. Without danger, there is no courage. Without monsters, there is no hero. Her existence reveals a deeper mythic law. The universe does not grow through comfort, it grows through tension. Echidna is the womb of that tension. She is primordial earth, refusing to be domesticated. She is chaos bloodline woven into the fabric of reality. Even the Olympians cannot erase her impact. Now, some later traditions claim she was slain by Argus Pantopus, the many-eyed giant servant of Hera, while she slept. Now, symbolically, this represents surveillance, destroying wild fertility, order suppressing the abyss. Yet, even in that version, her offspring remain. Her legacy persists. Her bloodline continues. You cannot eliminate the mother principle of resistance. You can only attempt to manage its expression. Echidna represents the archetype of the Dark Mother. Not evil, not malicious, but always necessary. The Dark Mother births the forces that compel transformation. She ensures that stagnation is impossible. She ensures that power must justify itself. She ensures that every kingdom must confront what it fears. Civilization defines itself by the monsters it overcomes, but someone must give birth to those monsters. That someone is Echidna. She is not chaos in motion, she is chaos as inheritance. She is the reminder that beneath every structure lies something older, something coiled, something fertile, something waiting. Echidna is not a footnote in heroic myth. She is the hidden foundation, primordial earth, chaos bloodline, mother of thresholds. And without her, there would be no trials, no transformation, and no legends at all. Ogwe, Admiral of the Living Sea. Stand at the edge of the Atlantic long enough and you begin to understand something. The ocean is not empty. It moves with intention. It breathes with memory. It carries names that history tried to erase. Every tide pulls at something deeper than the shore. Within that vastness stands Ogwe. He is not the chaos of crashing waves, nor the reckless fury of the storm. He is the discipline within the tide, the command inside emotion, the authority that charts the horizon. Ogwe is admiral. His presence is not loud, but it is undeniable. His skin is imagined in deep maritime blue, not decorative sky blue, but the heavy blue found beneath the surface where the light begins to disappear. Blue that borders on black, blue that holds secrets. Against the depth, gold rests easy, chains like navigational lines, medallions like compass centers, adornments that echo anchors pulled from the seafloor. Water does not thrash against him, it parts. When he stands in waist-high surf, the waves bend around his frames. The tide slows in recognition. The current listens. His crown rises like coral and plume, red and gold, cutting against the ocean air. Not vanity, but rank. Not decoration, but office. He governs sea salt. He governs ships. He governs routes, and routes shape destiny. The sea has been commerce, invasion, escape, exile, return. It has carried explorers and conquerors, traders and captives, dreamers and displaced. Ogwe presides over every crossing. He is the keeper of the passage, the witness of migration, the silent authority over the line between homeland and horizon. For the African diaspora, the Atlantic is not just geography, it is archive, it is grave, it is womb, it is rupture and survival intertwined. Millions crossed unwillingly, millions never saw land again. Millions endured and carried memory forward. Within voodoo cosmology, the sea is threshold, a place where worlds meet and spirits travel. Offerings to Ogwe are set afloat in small boats and released into the open water. They are not placed on altars inside walls. They are entrusted to distance. If the sea returns the offering, it was refused. If it carries it outward, it was accepted. Even in ritual, the message is clear. The ocean decides. Ogwe becomes more than a maritime spirit. He becomes the guardian of the scattered, protector of those who crossed and survived, keeper of those who did not. The Atlantic is not silent under his command, it remembers. Storms rise and some say it is random weather. Others whisper that the sea corrects itself, that it refutes certain weights, that it rejects certain chains. Ogwe does not rage without purpose. He commands. In ceremony, when he mounts a devotee, the posture changes. The body straightens. Movements become precise, controlled, naval. This is dignity in the bearing, authority in the gesture. He may salute, he may demand water. He may move as though standing on the deck of a ship no one else can see. His authority is not theatrical, it is discipline. He is often paired with La Sirene, the mermaid of depth and longing. If she is the song that draws you to the sea, he is the structure that governs its currents. If she is seduction and emotion, he is sovereignty and protection. Together they embody the emotional and commanding halves of the sea, call and command, longing and law. Ogwe's roots reach beyond the Caribbean. His essence echoes older West and Central African water traditions, river spirits, deep water guardians, forces of crossing and return. He carries ancestral continuity across oceans. Water was humanity's first mirror, its first road, its first boundary. Ogwe stands within that paradox. He is not the wave that crashes for spectacle, he is the tide that endures. For a people dispersed by water, he represents strength without cruelty, authority without oppression, protection without noise. He does not shout across the sea. He stands within it, steady, unmovable, commanding routes no empire could fully control. The ocean still moves, ships still cross, and beneath every horizon line, the admiral watches. Goddess who did not accept drought. In the late Bronze Age city of Ugarit, along the coast of what is now Syria, clay tablets are pressed with cuneiform signs that preserve one of the oldest storm myths in recorded history. Among those tablets was the story of Baal, the storm god, and within that story stands a figure who does not wait quietly for events to unfold. Her name is Anet. Now, Baal was not merely a god of thunder in this narrative. He represents rain, fertility, agricultural survival. In a region dependent on seasonal storms, Baal's vitality determines whether crops grow or fail. When Baal rises, the land flourishes. When Baal falls, droughts threaten everything. The Baal cycle describes a cosmic conflict. Baal clashes with Yam, the sea. Later, he confronts Mot, the god of death and sterility. These are not abstract enemies. Yam represents chaotic waters. Mot represents drought, dryness, the swallowing stiffness of death. And at one point in the narrative, Baal is defeated. Now, the text becomes fragmentary, but the message is clear. The storm god disappears. The rains cease. The agricultural cycle halts. And for a Bronze Age society, this is not symbolic drama. This is catastrophe. And this is where Anat enters with force. Anat is often described as Baal's sister. In some traditions, she is also his ally or consort. But the text makes one thing unmistakable. She is not subordinate. She is fierce, independent, emotionally intense. When Baal falls, Anat does not collapse into mourning. She reacts. The Ugaritic texts describe her rage in striking terms. She seeks out those who are responsible. She seizes enemies. She attacks without hesitation. The language is violent. She grabs warriors. She splits them. She scatters bodies. One passage describes her wading knee-deep in blood. Another describes her rejoicing in slaughter. This detail is uncomfortable for modern ears, but it tells us something important. In this world, violence carried out in defense of cosmic order is not shameful. It's necessary. Anat does not hesitate because hesitation would mean drought continues. She does not negotiate because negotiation does not bring rain. And myth does not portray her as irrational. It portrays her as decisive. The slaughter imagery is vivid, almost ritualistic. The battlefield becomes a space of sacred correction. Blood is not randomly cruel, it's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human entities, is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the texts describe her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Adnat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story, she is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall. Warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not